Chapter 178. In the dead of night. Inside the Moon Palace, a figure stood under the palace lantern. Among the shadows, one could tell that it was a woman with a good figure. A gust of wind blew away the thin palace veil, revealing the face of the person inside. Imperial concubine Moon's face was calm and restless. She stood there for a while as if she was waiting for someone. Suddenly, the candlelight flickered. Imperial concubine Moon couldn't help but close her eyes. When she opened them again, a black-clothed person had appeared in front of her. His entire body was covered by a cloak, making it impossible to see his appearance or figure. She could only feel that this person was very tall, but his entire body exuded a gloomy aura of death. But when Imperial concubine Moon looked over, the gloominess on his body faded a great deal. "Why did you order someone to summon me at this time? Is there something important?" The person's voice was low and slightly hoarse. She couldn't tell his age or gender. It seemed that he had changed his voice intentionally. As soon as Imperial concubine Moon saw who it was, she revealed a smile. "You came. I knew you would come." "Yes." The cloaked person nodded. "But you're too bold. The palace is heavily guarded. It's better to be careful," the cloaked person said. "With your martial arts, it's easy for you to enter the palace. Consort, you didn't care." Then, she went straight to the point. Xiao was sent to the Fully Mountain Range to investigate the mine. "What do you think about this?" "It's just a suicide mission," the cloaked person replied nonchalantly. "A suicide mission?" "Consort, you didn't understand. For so many years, the Fully Mountain Range has been covered in snow. It's close to the border of the Southern Kingdom. If there was a mine, it would have been excavated a long time ago. Why wait until now?" The cloaked person stood with his hands behind his back and analyzed for her. "What does your majesty mean?" Consort Yu was a little confused. Since there was no mine, why would he send Xiao to search for it? Suddenly, her eyes lit up with surprise. "Could it be that your majesty wants to send Xiao away, and use this period of time to nurture his forces and let him take root in the empire?" The cloaked man nodded slightly. "Not entirely. Cultivating Ranner is one of the reasons, and making Xiao disappear from this world is another reason. However, I think that there is another reason, but we can't find it yet. However, I have to say that Sichuan Emperor really treats you and your mother very well. He spends all his time and energy on you. How do I make Xiao disappear?" Consort Yu asked immediately. That was what she was most concerned about. Xiao was a thorn in her side. She had to get rid of him as soon as possible. "Do you know why the news of going to Fully Mountain Range to search for ores is known to everyone?" the cloaked man asked. "It can't be that your majesty sent someone to spread the news." Consort Yu shook her head. "Although your majesty didn't like Xiao, he wouldn't be so vicious. Sichuan Emperor didn't give the order, but he knows that someone will do it. Those who are jealous of Xiao and those who are at odds with the Liang family will do it. This way, the whole world will know that there are ores in Fully Mountain Range. Then those ambitious royals, those rich people who want to make huge profits, and those who don't care about their lives will all turn their attention to Fully Mountain Range. When that time comes, Fully Mountain Range will become a slaughterhouse." "But there are no ores there." Consort Yu frowned and asked. "So what if there are no ores?" "Many people don't know the truth. They would rather believe that there are ores than not. They would rather kill 3,000 innocents than let one go. If there really are ores, they will take a share of it no matter what. Moreover, if they can't get it, they won't let others get it either. This is the psychology of human nature." The cloaked man sneered. Because he had changed his voice, he couldn't speak. It sounded very strange, and gave people goosebumps. Consort Yu's eyes flashed with a sinister smile. "It seems that I don't have to interfere. This matter has already spread like wildfire. Haha, it seems that Xiao won't be far from death this time even if I don't do anything." But as soon as she finished speaking, Consort Yu frowned again. "No, I'm still worried. As long as Xiao is alive, I won't be at peace. What do you want to do?" The cloaked man raised his voice, as if he didn't agree. "If you don't remove the roots when you cut the weeds, they will grow again when the spring breeze comes. I thought that he would die on the battlefield." I thought that I could kill him with assassination after assassination, but he escaped every time. This time, the opportunity is so good. I can't just let it go so. Consort Yu looked at the cloaked man and said in a tone that brooked no argument. I want you to issue a kill order. Help me get rid of Xiao Su completely so that I can rest easy. The cloaked man muttered. It's not that I can't issue a kill order, but do you really want to do it? He met Consort Yu's pleading eyes and finally sighed. Fine. I'll let you be stubborn for so many years. Consort Yu saw that he had compromised and couldn't help but feel happy. I knew you were the best to me. The cloaked man smiled bitterly and shook his head. The Sichuan emperor was the best to you. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its own cubs, but he made an exception for you and your mother. With a wave of his cloak, he disappeared. Consort Yu looked at the wide-open window and laughed softly. Liang Yuan, this time. I want to see how you're going to fight with me. In the inner hall. Xiao Ho was playing chess with himself, holding a white piece in one hand and a black piece in the other. Master, the King of England is already 7 miles away. A subordinate knelt in front of him and reported. Xiao Ho placed a white piece, as if he didn't pay much attention to the subordinate's report. The heater was still burning, and the whole room was as warm as spring. The palace maids changed a new teacup. It was Bilyuakun tea. Xiao Ho picked up the teacup and gently slid the lid over the floating tea leaves. His movements were slow and deliberate, and he was living a refined and luxurious life. It was hard for outsiders to imagine that the third prince, who was always weak and delicate, had a smile on his face, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was as if he was an unpredictable wild wolf lying in ambush, waiting for an opportunity to take a bite out of you. Master, everything is still calm at the moment. Should we make a move? The subordinate suggested. Xiao Ho put down the teacup and took the brocade handkerchief from the palace maid. He wiped the corner of his mouth and said faintly, no need. It's not the right time yet. Moreover, there are many people who can't hold back. Why should we be the first to make a move? Yes, Master's consideration is more thorough than mine. The subordinate bowed his head and responded. Xiao Ho continued to play chess. His eyes fell on the chessboard. His hand that was holding a piece paused slightly. After a moment of contemplation, he slowly said, however, I don't think this should be a simple trip to the mine. Father should have other instructions. You send someone to pay close attention to the King of England's every move, and find out the secret mission. Yes, Master. The subordinate immediately accepted the order. Xiao Ho placed the last piece, and the game was set. The white pieces completely outflanked the black pieces, and the black pieces were defeated. On a moonless and windy night, how many conspiracies were staged one by one? The night was too cold, and the wind was too cold. Could the people who were on a long journey have a safe and smooth journey? Chapter 179. The night had engulfed the entire land, except for one place that still had a warm light. Big Ice Cube, can I sleep with you tonight? She was a little hesitant and a little timid. Xiao Su subconsciously wanted to refuse, but when his gaze fell on the restless black figure, he couldn't look away. The wait was torturous. After waiting for a while, there was no response. Chu Qingyan was a little discouraged. Was Big Ice Cube sleeping soundly? Or was he trying to use silence to refuse her? Forget it, I'll just squeeze in with Xining for a night. Just as she was about to turn and leave, she heard the sound of the tent opening. She lowered her head and met a pair of bottomless eyes. Come in. Her heart was filled with joy as she replied, okay. Then she quickly squeezed her way in. The tent wasn't big, just enough for one person to put down a blanket and pillow. It would be crowded with one more person, but luckily Chu Qingyan was petite and her figure was just right. It wouldn't make a difference whether she was there or not. After squeezing into the warm blanket, she couldn't help but sigh. The night in the mountains was really too cold. Just standing there for a while, she felt so cold that she couldn't stand it. The tent wasn't big, so Xiao Su could acutely feel the chill from her body. He reached out to pull her hands and covered them with his. He couldn't feel the warmth from her cold hands. He immediately frowned. It's such a cold day, don't you know how to put on more clothes? Although she brought a blanket, it was obvious that it would be crowded if she put it in. So she put the blanket outside the tent and shared it with Big Ice Cube. Even though she had the body of a 10-year-old, she still had the mind of a 20-year-old. So she tried her best to keep a distance between them, but she didn't expect that when Big Ice Cube pulled her, her entire body would almost stick to him. Chu Qingyan's face heated up slightly, and she replied in a low voice, "I forgot just now." She was only concerned with being afraid and couldn't care about anything else. Xiao Su heard this and remained silent. He just silently circulated his energy to disperse the chill from her body. The wind in the mountains was humid, and if it entered the body, it would damage the spirit. After a while, her whole body felt warm. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. When Xiao Su saw her curled up in front of him like a kitten, he released his hand and asked coolly, "Why did you suddenly want to sleep with this prince? You're already 10 years old, and you'll be of marriageable age in a few years. If you still sleep with others, people will laugh at you." Fortunately, Xiao Su rarely came into contact with women. His first thought was not that men and women should not be too close to each other. Instead, he felt that the little fellow was still too weak after years of fighting on the battlefield and going out to gain experience. How could he protect himself when he grew up? Chu Qingyan blushed and whispered, "I've slept in a tent before, but a snake sneaked in at night and bit me so." Back then, when she went to the wilderness to survive, it was because of this incident that she was left with a sequela. She didn't dare to sleep alone outside at night, especially in the wilderness. The past was unbearable to recall. "I originally wanted to find Xining, but I don't know why I couldn't help but walk over to you. If it's not convenient for you, I'll go out now." It seems like she still caused trouble for Big Ice Cube. He was such a delicate person since he was young, so he probably wasn't used to sharing a bed with others. Just as she was about to get up, a force suddenly came from her waist and pulled her into his embrace. She was caught off guard and bumped into his lean chest. Through the thin clothes, she seemed to be able to hear his strong heartbeat. "Stop messing around. Could it be that you want to be exposed to the cold wind again?" Xiao Su softly reprimanded her. He pressed her against him with one hand and lifted the blanket to her neck to prevent her from catching a cold. When Chu Qingyan came back to her senses, she was already nestled in his embrace. She was instantly moved. Although his tone was a bit bad, he still locked her in his embrace, not allowing her to be exposed to the cold wind. She felt an indescribable desire to rely on this person. "Thank you, Big Ice Cube," she softly said. Perhaps she really did rely on this person, or perhaps she really did place this person in her heart as important as her parents. So when she was tossing and turning in the tent, the first person that flashed through her mind was him. Perhaps if she told her friends in university that she went to an adult man's place in the middle of the night to sleep with him, they would probably scold her to death. She didn't have any sense of safety at all, but she believed in Big Ice Cube's character. Moreover, Big Ice Cube really doted on her like she was his daughter, although the age difference was a bit. That was why she was so thick-skinned as to take a picture of his tent. Now that she thought about it, it was a bit strange. How could she have the courage to make such a request? But when that warm and comforting chest held her, she felt that everything wasn't that important anymore. "Big Ice Cube, I have a question I want to ask you." Before she went to sleep, she suddenly thought of something, but she was a bit hesitant when she asked. He replied a bit casually. "When did you wake up last night? What I mean is, you were clearly very drunk, so how could you have just woken up when Chengyi went in?" She had always wanted to ask this question because she wanted to know, when she wanted to pick up his mask, was he already sober? If he had already woken up, but allowed her to pick up his mask, did that mean he was willing to let her see his true appearance? If he hadn't woken up at the time, why would Chengyi's improper actions have been discovered? Nothing made sense. This king is very sensitive to smells. Xiao Su only replied with this one sentence before falling silent. Chu Qingyan's eyes were filled with confusion. Could it be that he had woken up because he smelled Huang Yi's scent? Then what about her? Could it be that Big Ice Cube had lost his sense of smell from her body? This question was so hard to solve. The person who revealed the answer was so stingy. She was in a daze as she thought about it, then fell asleep. Xiao Su listened to the even breathing of the person in his arms, and his lips slightly hooked. People who practice martial arts always had a thread in their minds that was stretched taut. If there was any movement around them, they would immediately wake up. This was self-defense. But they would also relax their vigilance towards the people around them who were close to them. And the little fellow, in these days of getting along with each other, had already made him accustomed to her existence. This was also the reason why she was able to get within 3 steps of him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so assured to give himself to the little fellow after getting drunk. There was no one in the King of England's palace who didn't know about their lord's taboos. As soon as everyone entered the palace, they were already informed that they were allowed to make mistakes, but they couldn't violate the lord's 4 prohibitions. They weren't allowed to enter the study at will. They weren't allowed to enter the room in the middle of the night. They weren't allowed to get within 3 steps of him. They weren't allowed to criticize in private. These 4 prohibitions were obeyed by everyone. It was just that these 2 people, unknowingly, got closer little by little. In the beginning, it had nothing to do with love, it had nothing to do with interests and strategies, and it had nothing to do with wealth and family background. It was pure as water. Chapter 180. When she woke up early in the morning, there was only her and a blanket left in the tent. Where was the big ice cube? She glanced around and finally sobered up and got up. The moment Chu Qingyan came out of the tent, she saw Xining holding a basin of water and waiting outside with her head lowered. Just as she was about to speak to Xining, she instantly felt everyone's gaze turn towards her. She raised her head in confusion and saw those people immediately looking elsewhere, pretending to be very busy. Chu Qingyan felt that these people were strange, but she had to wash up first. She turned to look at Xining and suddenly realized that Xining was also a little strange today. From the moment she came out of the tent, she had not said a single word. Xining. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but call out to her. Xining raised her head and looked at her smilingly with her round eyes. Master, are you going to wash up? Chu Qingyan raised her hand to rub her chin and looked at her suspiciously. Speak, what's going on? Why is it so strange when I come out? Xining laughed mischievously. Master, last night you... She raised her hand and pointed at the tent behind her master. Chu Qingyan followed her line of sight and suddenly understood. She raised her hand to slap her hand and said disapprovingly, Little girl, you're so young. Why are you thinking of such unhealthy things? She deliberately raised her voice to let the fire spirits who were listening attentively hear her. Xining asked doubtfully, Unhealthy? No, it's just that the fire spirit said this morning that master is too timid. So she ran to Lord's tent. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. She felt that she had misunderstood. She looked around and saw everyone nodding at the same time. Little Princess Consort, you're too timid. Chu Qingyan was so angry that her head was on fire. So what if she was timid? Was it not allowed for people to have weaknesses? Master, you are even more timid than Xining. Xining will accompany you in the future. Xining said very seriously. Chu Qingyan felt as if an arrow had pierced her knee. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Thank you for Xining. When they arrived at the dining area, the tables were also pieced together. Chu Qingyan sat down on a chair with a dejected look on her face. She had painstakingly built up her reputation when the ice cube was being wronged. Now it had fallen back to square one in one night. Yin lass, I heard that last night you... The Emperor Emeritus touched a sore spot. Chu Qingyan waved her hand weakly and said perfunctorily, I know. You also want to laugh at me for being a coward. Just laugh. The retired emperor laughed heartily at her words. Yin lass, I'm not talking about this. Then what do you want to say? It was rare that the retired emperor didn't laugh at her for being a coward. She couldn't help but feel refreshed. It seemed that the retired emperor wasn't the kind of person who would hit someone when they were down. She wouldn't bicker with him about the pastries from before. She saw the retired emperor approach her mysteriously and whisper into her ear, Is my grandson's tofu delicious? She was struck by lightning. Chu Qingyan felt as if she had been charred by lightning. Only now did she remember that there was someone here who was familiar with her background. How could she have forgotten? Imperial grandfather, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. We're innocent. Chu Qingyan argued with all her might. Don't worry, I understand. And I also went through this in the past. Don't think that there's a generation gap between us just because we're separated by several generations. Imperial grandfather is very open-minded. The retired emperor patted her shoulder in a very righteous manner, almost knocking her lungs out. Imperial grandfather, what the hell do you know? Chu Qingyan felt that she would only make things worse, so she simply shut her mouth and didn't want to say anything else. But the retired emperor clearly didn't want to let her go. He half tempted and half threatened her. Yin lass, it's fine if you don't want me to say anything. When we reach a prosperous place, remember not to be stingy. Under the heavens, all lands belong to the emperor. On the shores of the earth, all are the emperor's subjects. Under the heavens, all lands belong to the emperor, so why do you keep thinking about my purse? Every sentence was about food. Chu Qingyan felt that this retired emperor was getting closer and closer to her father. The retired emperor had an "I don't blame you if you don't understand" expression. Don't you know what it means to see happiness on the other shore? Eating other people's things and using other people's things is much happier than spending your own money. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. She really had to hand it to him. At this time, Xiao, Hualing, and the others just happened to slowly walk over. They could hear their conversation from afar. Master, if we enter the Zhujiang region from here, we only need to cross the 7 Li Mountain and walk straight for 3 days. Hualing held a map and pointed at a place as he spoke. Xiao lowered his head to look at the map and ordered, "No need to take a shortcut. Cross the 7 Li Mountain and enter the first city." Hualing was a little confused. "Master, if we enter the first city, we have to take this official road. Then it will take an extra day of travel. This doesn't seem right." "Just follow the orders," Xiao lightly said, rejecting his subordinate's opinion. Hualing scratched his head. He felt that there was something wrong with his master this time, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Since his master wanted to take a detour, then they'll take a detour. His Majesty didn't insist that they rush to the Fuli mountain range anyways. "Then master, do you have any other orders?" Hualing asked. "Who is managing the city we're entering?" Xiao sat down on a chair. Huang Yi and the others had already served the dishes, arranged the bowls and chopsticks, and then retreated. Hualing seriously looked at the map, then replied, "The prefect is Luing. He manages the 3 prefectures and 7 counties. Pingyang City is the main city, and it's also the first city we're entering. This prince wants the information on his management of the 3 prefectures and 7 counties in recent years," Xiao said calmly. Hualing immediately agreed. Chu Qingyan, who was eating at the side, didn't understand. They could save time, so why did the big ice block want to take a detour? Could it be that he had other plans? Luing, this name is so familiar. The Emperor Emeritus, who was eating in big mouthfuls, suddenly spoke. Xiao turned to look at him, and his tone seemed to carry a bit of a sigh. He's the 18th generation of the imperial family's side branch. The Emperor Emeritus coughed lightly when he heard this. This prince hasn't been in charge for many years, so I don't remember clearly. Xiao said faintly, 2 years ago, when you passed by the district under Lu Ying's control, you even stayed in his residence for half a month. The Emperor Emeritus immediately buried his head in his food. As the saying goes, don't talk when eating. Chu Qingyan's head was full of black lines. The Emperor Emeritus was a classic example of forgetting after eating. "After eating, we'll set off," Xiao ordered. Everyone accepted the order. In less than 2 hours, the information on the areas under Lu Ying's management in recent years was placed on Xiao's table. In the carriage, Xiao flipped through the stack of information that was half a person's height, page by page. Chu Qingyan noticed that his expression was getting darker and darker. She couldn't help but purse her lips. Why did the big ice block put aside his official business and investigate this Luing first? Once they left the capital, she felt that the big ice block was acting strangely. Chapter 181. Chu Qingyan held her chin and thought back to the knowledge she had read in books before. At that time, her teacher had told them that the governor was the highest-ranking official in the country. Other than governing the people, promoting the virtuous, deciding the lawsuits, and investigating the traitors, he could also appoint and dismiss the scribes. that was equivalent to the current high-ranking officials and mayors. However, the ancient counties were much smaller than the modern ones, so there was no comparison at all. However, this position was already not small in the ancient times. At this time, a gust of wind blew in and the paper on the little bed fell to her feet. She picked it up and inadvertently saw the words written on it. 3 years ago, Lu Ying's Qi County had a flood. The court had allocated 3 million taels of silver, but in the end the citizens of Qi County only received 300,000 taels. The other 2,700,000 taels were a mystery. In the flood disaster, 172 people died and 110 of them died from starvation. Chu Qingyan looked at the information written on the paper with wide eyes. No wonder Ice Block Yu's face was so bad. With the several million taels of relief money being a mystery, there was a certain meaning to it. Corruption. In this world, there was no business that wasn't corrupt and no official that wasn't corrupt. This had already become the common saying of the citizens. Was that Ice Block going to take care of it? She silently put the paper back. She had never doubted the Ice Block's abilities, so she just needed to follow him. No matter what he did, she would support him. She originally had a bit of energy to look at the scenery outside the window, but as the carriage swayed, she began to feel drowsy. In the end, her body tilted and she fell asleep on the bed. Chu Qingyan had also redesigned the interior of the carriage. The concept of the small couch inside was the same as that of modern foldable sofas. Therefore, when she fell asleep sitting on the couch, Xiao Su, who had been paying attention to her, shook his head when he saw this. He carried her and flipped her over to the upper couch, joining it with the lower couch to form a small bed. Only then did he gently put her down. He silently stared at the sleeping face for a while. Perhaps from today onwards, it would be bumpy. There wouldn't be a soft bed to sleep on every time. Little fellow, are you ready? Are you ready to face the wind and rain with this king? The peacefully sleeping Chu Qingyan did not know that someone had been staring at her for a long time, not leaving their line of sight. Halfway through their journey, there was a sudden gust of wind and dark clouds covered the sky. Hualing looked at the dark sky and his heart sunk. There was no village or shop here. If there was a storm, there wouldn't be a place to hide from the rain. So the group of people rushed and arrived at the ferry port in the evening. The carriage stopped and Chu Qingyan was already awake. There was only her and she was the only person in the carriage. She wanted to get up, but when she saw the blanket was covering her body, she couldn't help revealing a smile. Who said the ice block was a cold person? Didn't he knew how to take care of time? She silently ridiculed those who slandered Big Ice Cube in her heart, then got out of the carriage. How to the internet was that time in the end? It seemed like the words on Weibo were right. When the wind came, it was time to test everyone's weight. 80 kilograms would be blown away, 90 kilograms would be lifted off the ground, 110 kilograms would be wrapped around the pole, and 130 kilograms would not be able to stand on the road. Only the heavy weight could be as stable as Mount Tai. It was a good thing the wind was not as strong as a typhoon. Otherwise she would already be floating in the sky. She opened her eyes from the wind, and found that she was standing at a small ferry port. She could almost see the town on the other side, but looking at the splashes created by the wind, it would be very difficult to get through the night. Her hands formed a small tent in front of her. Looking around, she saw the ice block standing by the river, as well as the retired emperor, Hualing, Muling, Ethereal, and the others by his side. At this time Xining walked over. Master, you're awake. Lord just told this servant not to disturb you. And I've slept enough. That's right. Are we going to cross the river tonight? Chu Qingyan led Xining to the people in front of her as she asked. Xining replied, just now, I heard Lord Hualing's meaning. It seems like we want to stay here for the night and cross the river tomorrow. Chu Qingyan nodded. The sky was getting darker and the wind was getting stronger. Staying for the night before setting off was a wise decision. When they approached the group of people, they heard Lve say, there is an inn 1 li away from here. We can stay there for the night. Xiao Su nodded and Hualing began to order the others to get on their horses and prepare to find the inn. Chu Qingyan approached Lve and asked curiously, Lve, you don't leave the house. How do you know there is an inn here? Lve smiled faintly. Little Gongzi, LVE's main responsibility is to memorize all the places in our Sichuan that we can stay in. Everyone has their own specialties. This servant is only doing her job well. Outside, everyone called Chu Qingyan Little Gongzi. Her identity was Xiao Su's younger cousin called Chu Yan. Of course, Chu Yan was given by Chu Qingyan herself. Originally, Xiao Su called her Xiao Yan, but when she said that, she immediately rejected it. Why did Xiao Yan sound like anti-inflammatory medicine? So she immediately changed her identity from blood brother to cousin. Chu Qingyan clicked her tongue. Sure enough, there was a saying that as long as you worked hard in one direction, you would become a great person sooner or later. LVE's powerful brain capacity and memory also made her admire her. The people around Big Ice Cube were all capable people. So the group of people headed towards the only inn within 100 miles. But when they arrived at the inn, a cold wind blew from behind them. In the dilapidated room, the first inn's signboard had already lost 3 of its triangular nails. There was only 1 nail left that was unable to maintain the signboard. A first inn. Xining struggled to see the words that were already covered in spider webs. Right now was not the time to care about this. The sky was already dark, and with the flashing of lightning, the rain would fall at any moment. So the group of people went in. When the people inside heard the commotion, they began to loudly shout, "Who is it? Who is it?" Chu Qingyan looked over when she heard this and saw a 30 to 40-year-old man with a body full of fat walk out. His nose was pointed to the sky, and from her angle, she could see that his chin was piled up to his neck. There was a thumb-thick gold necklace hanging from his short neck. He was simply a nouveau riche. Hualing resisted the urge to vomit and went forward to ask, "Are you the innkeeper? Our group wants to stay. Do you have any rooms?" Hearing that they were staying, the fat man immediately lowered his head and swept his eyes over the people present. When he saw the people in front, they were all dressed in luxurious clothes and looked like they came from rich families. His eyes immediately lit up and his attitude changed 180 degrees. Yes, yes, yes. No matter how many people come, there are enough rooms. At this time another voice sounded out. "Damn ghost, what happened?" The fat man immediately turned his head and replied, "Woman, the big head is here." Once he said this, he realized that he had misspoken. The fat man immediately smiled and corrected himself. "Honored guests are here." Chu Qingyan's face turned dark. Chapter 182. At the corner of the staircase, a woman in her 30s walked out. She had an enchanting figure, but she looked very shrewd. When she saw Chu Qingyan and company, her eyes lit up. "So it's our esteemed guests. Please come in." When Chu Qingyan saw her face, she couldn't help looking away. That face was like a moving wall with a thick layer of powder on it. With each step the powder fell off. "Damn ghost, why aren't you greeting the guests yet?" The smart woman was very attentive to Chu Qingyan's group, but she turned around and shouted at the fat man. The fat man immediately called out, "Guests, come with me. I'll bring you to see the rooms." As soon as his voice fell, LVE stood up. "Shopkeeper, this servant will come with you to take a look." When the fat man saw LVE, his eyes lit up. Even a maidservant was this good-looking. He rubbed his hands together and led LVE up the stairs. Chu Qingyan was not assured. She looked at Hualing, and Hualing immediately sent a subordinate to follow them up. Hearing the creaking sounds coming up the stairs, Chu Qingyan's lips twitched. She was really worried that the entire staircase would collapse if she wasn't careful. "Then guests, what do you want to eat tonight?" The smart woman asked with a smile, as if she did not see the unnatural expressions on everyone's faces. "What do you have?" Chu Qingyan stood up and asked. The smart woman saw Chu Qingyan dressed in men's clothes, looking delicate and cute. Her eyes lit up and she immediately replied, "Our store has steamed chicken with winter melon, braised pig trotters with southern milk, pumpkin and pork ribs with black bean sauce, black fish and chicken stew, potato roasted tendon, tofu pudding with fat intestines, soy pork shoulder." The smart woman listed a series of dishes. When everyone heard this, they were all a bit hungry after traveling for 2 days. Chu Qingyan heard this and thought for a bit before saying, "No need, my family has a chef, we just need to borrow the kitchen." "Stinky brat, Grandpa, I want to eat." The saliva that had flowed out of the retired emperor's mouth instantly disappeared. Just as he was about to resist, he saw Chu Qingyan looking at him with a beaming smile. He immediately shut his mouth. "Grandpa, the doctor has already said that you're not allowed to eat greasy food, meat, or fish these few days. Have you forgotten?" Hearing this, retired emperor rubbed his nose. This girl's eyesight was too sharp. When Hualing and the others saw the retired emperor being suppressed by their little princess, they couldn't help but laugh. The shrewd woman did not have much to object to. She only said that the kitchen was messy and needed to be tidied up. Then, she went into the kitchen to inform the chef. After a while, she came out again and allowed Chu Qingyan to instruct her people to bring her ingredients into the kitchen. At this time, Qingyi and Xining had already wiped the greasy table and chairs with cloth towels, and let the three masters sit down. When the shrewd woman saw that the other party was using her own tea set, she did not get angry. Instead, she stood at the side and observed Chu Qingyan's group. Her eyes darted around, and no one knew what she was thinking. When Ethereal saw this, she couldn't help but say, "Innkeeper, we don't need people here. You can leave." Good. You guys have a good chat." The shrewd woman responded politely before turning to walk towards the kitchen. When they were the only ones left on the first floor, Hualing looked around warily. "Master, this subordinate feels that this inn is a bit strange." "And it can't be described as strange," Muling agreed. "Unstrengthen the guard tonight." Xiao swept a look at the shabby inn and said to Hualing, "Yes." Hualing responded and gathered the guards to deploy the guards for the night. The Bilyuakun tea was brewed and Chu Qingyan poured tea for the two of them. She sighed and said, "If it weren't for the fact that there was no other inn within 100 li radius, I wouldn't enter this inn even if you beat me to death." "Stinky brat, you're really timid." Thinking back to when I was roaming the north and south, the Emperor Emeritus began to ramble on and on about his heroic deeds in the past. It was an endless stream. Although the Emperor Emeritus had been calling her stinky brat ever since she changed her appearance, ignoring the way he addressed her, the Emperor Emeritus's stories were quite immersive. Adding on his dancing body language, it was even more fascinating. When the Emperor Emeritus's mouth was dry and he stopped to drink water, Xiao slowly said, "Who helped you with the trouble you caused back then?" The Emperor Emeritus choked on the tea that he had just drunk. His face was full of guilt, but when he saw Chu Qingyan waiting for him to continue, he immediately said, "There's a junior here, don't always undermine me. Be careful of people saying that you're hard to get along with." Xiao drank his tea and ignored him. Seeing that the big ice cube didn't reveal anything, Chu Qingyan immediately turned to ask, "Grandfather, who helped you deal with it? What trouble did you cause?" Cough cough, the past is unbearable to recall. Let everything go with the wind. The Emperor Emeritus drank tea to cover it up. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips in disbelief. It didn't matter, paper couldn't wrap fire. She would know one day. At this time Lve, who had finished checking the room, walked down the stairs and reported to her lord. "Master, the room upstairs is quite clean. You can stay there." The moment Lve finished speaking, the fat man immediately boasted, "Our family's inn is the best inn within 100 li radius." As soon as he said that, the fat man's gaze met with Xiao's and he suddenly shivered. He instantly forgot what he wanted to say, and immediately found an excuse to slip away. After a while, Huangyi had already walked up with the dishes. It was a simple vegetarian dish, but it looked, smelled and tasted good, causing everyone's stomachs to rumble. Xiao waved his hand, and everyone sat down and started eating. Chu Qingyan didn't have much of an appetite, so she asked Huangyi, "Did everything go well in the kitchen just now?" When Huangyi heard that, her eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of disgust. The kitchen can be said to be dirty and messy. Everywhere is greasy, but the only pleasing thing is that the knives in their kitchen are very sharp and the chopping board is very big. But this servant isn't used to their things, so I used all the things I brought from the Fu. Chu Qingyan nodded and fell into deep thought while holding her chopsticks. As soon as she entered this inn, she felt that everything was strange. There was a fat boss, a shrewd lady boss and a scarred chef. There was no one else in the entire inn. Her eyelids kept twitching, as if something would happen tonight. At this time, a deafening clap of thunder exploded in the sky. The Duskian turned bright in an instant, but a moment later, it fell into darkness again with the lingering sound of the thunder god. Everyone had a lingering fear. When the Emperor Emeritus saw her in a daze, he couldn't help but divert his attention from the delicious food to her. "I say, stinky brat, why aren't you eating? Don't cry that you're hungry at night." "I don't seem to be the one saying that I'm hungry in the middle of the night." Chu Qingyan returned to her senses and joked with a smile. When the Emperor Emeritus heard that, he muttered, "You really don't know how to appreciate good intentions." Chu Qingyan helplessly shook her head, but with the Emperor Emeritus's jesting, her mood improved a lot. Just as she was about to eat, a pair of chopsticks fell in front of her, and a fried egg appeared in her bowl. "Don't talk too much, hurry up and eat." Immediately after, Xiao Su's voice came from her side. Chu Qingyan turned to look at the person beside her. He was calmly eating his meal. His actions were elegant, and his nobility wasn't affected in the slightest by the environment. She nodded and buried her head in eating. When she heard the Emperor Emeritus grumble that he picked up food for her, and didn't pick up food for the elders, she couldn't help but laugh. Perhaps the journey would be filled with inconceivable challenges, but at this moment, in this desolate and strange inn, she felt a moment of peace. Chapter 183. After the meal, that shrewd woman wanted to help clean up, but Huang Yi tactfully declined. She wasn't annoyed and continued to smile. However, Chu Qingyan felt that it was better for her not to smile than to smile. Who knew how much of the powder on her face fell as her facial muscles trembled? Thunder rumbled, each louder than the last, as if it was going to tear the entire world apart. The dark clouds in the sky were about to merge with the distant mountain peak. It was obvious that a storm was coming tonight. At this moment, the shrewd woman held a lantern and said to everyone, "Everyone rest early. I'll lead you upstairs." As she said that, she led the way. Chu Qingyan stepped on the wooden ladder and heard creaking sounds. She was a little embarrassed and quickened her pace to go upstairs. Qingyi had already arranged the rooms for everyone. The retired emperor stretched lazily and couldn't wait to enter his own room. Chu Qingyan turned around and was about to say goodnight to Xiao Su when she heard him say to Xining, "Move your master's quilt and pillow to my room." When he said that, not only Xining, but Chu Qingyan was also stunned. "Oh, okay." Xining responded somewhat incoherently. Chu Qingyan couldn't believe that the person in front of her would say that and immediately confirmed, "Big Ice Cube, am I sleeping with you tonight?" Xiao Su didn't feel that there was anything wrong. In any case, they had already slept together on the same bed last night. 1 or 2 more nights wouldn't make any difference to him. Thus, in the end, Chu Qingyan didn't even know how she floated into his room. After entering the door, Chu Qingyan looked around the room. The direction was indeed, as Lve said, quite clean. Chu Qingyan touched the table, and then walked to the windowsill. At this time, the wind was strong and the trees outside were already blown to the side. The cold wind poured in, so she quickly closed the window tightly. Xining came in with the quilt. After laying it out, she left. "Sleep early tonight. If the rain stops tomorrow, we still have to continue our journey," Xiao Su said to her lightly. Chu Qingyan looked over, and saw that he was about to take off his clothes to rest. She naturally walked over, took his belt, and took his coat to the side of the wardrobe to hang them up. Perhaps it was because the two of them had interacted like this before in the Wang Fu. So at this moment, they did not feel that there was anything wrong. When the two of them took off their outer clothes, they were already on the bed and covered with a blanket. The late autumn night was very cold. Although it was not as bone-piercing as the winter night, it still made people shiver. Chu Qingyan pulled the blanket up to her chin, and her eyes darted around. The bed curtain above her head was dark black, and at a glance, it looked like a bottomless pit. Her thoughts immediately scattered. Xiao Su saw her slightly dazed expression from the corner of his eyes and couldn't help but reach out to cover her eyes. "Sleep, don't let your thoughts run wild." From the moment they entered the inn, he had already felt a faint uneasiness from her body. It was obvious that she was not experienced enough, and her willpower was not enough. His heart had a grudge against this inn, so he was not at ease leaving her alone in the room. He felt that he would only be at ease if she was under his watch, so he brought her into his room without any hesitation. Chu Qingyan felt that slightly warm hand leave her eyelid, and couldn't help but open one eye. She said to the person beside her in an aggrieved voice, "I really want to sleep quickly, but I slept too long during the day. Right now, I don't feel sleepy at all." At this moment, the two of them each had a blanket. Chu Qingyan felt a little cold, so she buried her chin in the blanket. Last night's sleep was still more comfortable. The large ice cube was like a heater, and her entire body was warm. As if sensing her small movements, Xiao Su pulled open his own blanket. "Come in." Chu Qingyan was overjoyed. She pulled open her own blanket and rolled into his blanket, only stopping when she touched his chest. The long-awaited warmth enveloped her body, making Chu Qingyan feel so comfortable that she smiled contentedly. Xiao Su saw her satisfied face and couldn't help but feel a little helpless in his heart. She really was a kitten that was easily satisfied. However, those who were content with what they had were more likely to feel happy. After being warmed up, she began to feel restless. Chu Qingyan turned over and laid on the pillow. She asked with a curious face, "Big Ice Cube, do you wear a mask when you sleep?" Since leaving the capital, the large ice cube had been wearing a gauze hat. She knew that this was to hide his identity. Now that he was sleeping with a mask, it seemed that no matter when, he had never shown his true face to others. Xiao Su replied with his eyes closed. "Big Ice Cube, are the burns on my face really that serious?" She hesitated for a moment before asking the question that had been in her heart. But after waiting for a while with her eyebrows lowered, the large ice cube didn't answer. She raised her head and saw that his eyes were closed, as if he had fallen asleep. She couldn't help but give up on this question. Forget it, the large ice cube was probably used to wearing it. Why should she worry about this question? Thus, she silently counted more than 200 dumplings in her heart before falling asleep in a daze. He didn't know when, but the person beside him had rubbed against his shoulder, completely using his shoulder as a pillow. Xiao Su turned his head and lowered his eyebrows. What entered his eyes was a head of fine black hair that was as smooth as silk and as black as ink jade. A gentle light flashed in his eyes. "The time isn't right yet. You will see it eventually." After whispering, his long arms pulled her into his embrace. Then he closed his eyes, 30% alert, 70% sleep. The heavy rain that had been brewing for an entire afternoon and night finally poured down. Thunder and lightning rumbled. The bean-sized raindrops hit the roof one by one, pitter-patter. In the whole world, other than the wind and lightning, and the majestic rain, no other sound could be heard. And the small world in his arms had already become her warm harbor. There was no storm, no wind and no lightning. "I hope that I can protect you safe and happy." In the kitchen, a few figures sneakily gathered in a circle, conspiring. This time there are a few big fishes. Judging by their clothes and expenses, they are obviously from rich families. "Looks like we are going to strike it rich tonight," the fat man said greedily. The scarred chef nodded, but he had some misgivings. These people have servants with them. It looks like they are all martial artists. There are a lot of people walking, it's not easy to deal with them. The shrewd woman sneered. "What are you afraid of? It's still the same as last time. They will all be taken down. Won't they still let us do whatever we want?" "Wife is right." The fat man nodded repeatedly. "But I keep feeling that the man with the gauze hat is a little scary," the scarred chef said. "Don't be afraid. We have already done so many jobs. What kind of difficult master have we not met? It's settled then. We will act at 3 o'clock. The shrewd woman made the final decision. The other two looked at each other, and they had no objections. In the dark night, the violent wind and rain ravaged the earth. Dozens of horses galloped in the rain. On the backs of the horses were men in black. They carried bows and arrows on their backs, and long swords at their waists. They urged the black horses to step through the rain and head towards the ferry. Their voices were covered by the angry roars of the heavens and the earth. The black shadows blended into the darkness. If no one looked carefully, they would not be able to discover these black-clothed men with thick killing intent. Chapter 184. Late at night, it was raining heavily. The astute woman was holding a large bowl of soup as she walked into the hall on the first floor. Hualing was patrolling downstairs with people. Seeing the astute woman walking in, he immediately said, Shop owner, why aren't you resting this late? The astute woman angrily said. For us who do business, how can we rest? Serving you is our duty. The astute woman said this as she walked to the square table. She put down the bowl and said to Huiling and the others, It's raining so heavily and the weather is cold. Come, drink some soup to warm up your bodies. Huiling righteously refused when he heard this. No need. Many thanks for shop owner's good intentions, but we still need to guard. The astute woman paused before continuing to persuade them. Drinking a bowl of soup won't delay your work. Moreover, your bodies will be warm after drinking it, so wouldn't you have more energy to resist the cold wind at night? Huiling waved his hand and turned to patrol. Seeing that Huiling was not moved and the servants under him were still standing guard, the astute woman deliberately used her hand to spread the fragrance in the bowl. Even if the fragrance spread, no one would bat an eye. The astute woman cursed in her heart, this group of stubborn people. So she carried the bowl of soup back down. The two people in the kitchen saw her return without any success and were a bit worried. What do we do? These people are stubborn. It is indeed hard to trick them, but it doesn't matter. Looking at the sky, this rain won't last until tomorrow. Just relax and wait. With this delay, they had missed the best time. The astute woman fiercely said this. On whatever wife says, the fat man said with a smile. Because he was too fat, his eyes disappeared when he smiled. The scarred chef nodded. Anyway, these people can't leave, so we'll think of a way tomorrow. Moreover, when I wandered around the horse stables, I found that there were quite a few good things in their carriages. If we can take down these people, we can earn a large amount. Last time, those people looked decent, but they didn't even have a few dozen tails in their luggage. They really suffered a large loss. The fat man said with disdain. So this time, we have to be careful. There are quite a few people, so it's best to be careful. The astute woman said in a small voice. The two of them nodded when they heard this. He had a dreamless night. When Chu Qingyan woke up, she found that the sky was still dark, and she could faintly hear that the wind was still howling outside. She wondered, could it be that she woke up too early, and the sky was still dark? But when he turned around, the bed beside him was already empty. Clearly, Big Ice Cube had woken up. Chu Qingyan rubbed her eyes and got up. Xining, who was outside, heard the noise inside and came in with water. Master, did you sleep well last night? Xining came in and asked with a smile. Chu Qingyan nodded. Pretty good. Is it still raining outside? Xining wrung the cloth dry and handed it to her. Yes, the wind is very strong. Although the rain has stopped, Lord Huiling said that there might be a storm today. Perhaps we will have to stay here for another day. Chu Qingyan took the cloth and wiped her face and hands. She said somewhat worriedly, This is the only way. This weather is not suitable for crossing the river, otherwise the consequences will be unpredictable. After washing up, Chu Qingyan walked out of the room feeling refreshed. She stepped on the creaking ladder and went downstairs. Xiao Su and the rest were already seated downstairs drinking tea. The moment Chu Qingyan sat down, she saw retired Emperor winking at her. Her mouth twitched. Grandfather, you didn't sleep well last night. Even your eyes are crooked? Retired Emperor immediately restrained his expression and glared at her in annoyance. You're the one who slept crooked. Chu Qingyan was instantly in a good mood. Bickering with retired Emperor was the most interesting thing. Thus, Chu Qingyan happily enjoyed her breakfast. Let's stay here for another day and see how the weather is tomorrow before making any plans. Xiao Su said lightly. Chu Qingyan nodded. No objections. At this time, the guard who went out against the wind came back. He cupped his hands towards his master and said, The water level of the river is rising. If it doesn't recede tomorrow, it will be difficult for the boat to move forward. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she frowned. Could it be that they still couldn't move tomorrow? Keep an eye on the water level. Xiao Su ordered. The moment he finished speaking, the heavy rain fell again with pitter-patter. The troops rested. Ethereal studied the medical book in the room. Mu Ling was also fiddling. Qing Yi went to the stable to feed the horses. Lve went upstairs to tidy up the room. At this time, only Chu Qingyan, Xiao Su, retired Emperor Xining, Gu Rong, Gu Yi, and the others were left in the main hall. Hualing came back after strengthening the guards. When he saw the young princess counting the water droplets in boredom, he couldn't help but ask, "Little Gongzi, why don't you take this opportunity to practice the horse stance and practice martial arts?" When Chu Qingyan heard this, she was startled. Then she saw Big Ice Cube look over. She suddenly felt sweat on her head. I think that it's good to have Qinggong. If something happens, it'll be fine." Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose and said with a laugh. She didn't know if it was because she left the capital, but her desire to practice martial arts wasn't as strong. She subconsciously felt that the capital was the most dangerous place. Without powerful abilities, she couldn't protect herself. But now she had changed her mind. If she only had martial arts and no intelligence, it would be difficult to protect herself. So she didn't have such a strong pursuit of martial arts. However, in short, she was lazy. The scenery outside was too beautiful. She was far away from the disputes in the capital. Her entire person was relaxed, and her sense of danger wasn't as obvious. When retired emperor heard this, he said with some disappointment, "Don't regret it when it's time to use it." Chu Qingyan lightly coughed and didn't respond. Only she felt Big Ice Cube's gaze on her. Thinking about it, she said, "Cousin, I think I can be your support and help you take care of everything behind you. That way, you won't have to worry about anything behind you. How about it? You can do your own things and I'll protect your back. All the trivial matters won't bother you." Xiao Su originally wanted to use this opportunity to let her grow bit by bit. At least, she wouldn't need to rely on others. But in these 2 days, when she slept peacefully in his arms at night, those thoughts slowly dissipated. Forget it, he'll protect her. Actually, she had already done very well. From the time Xiao Ran was attacked until now, everything she did had exceeded his expectations. She faced difficulties head-on and never backed down. Even when going out, she considered everything. Why did he need to ask her to be omnipotent? That was enough. Chu Qingyan was relieved to be able to obtain Big Ice Cube's understanding. Although it wasn't a burden to have more skills, she wasn't interested in practicing martial arts. Moreover, she believed that with Big Ice Cube around, even if she was in danger, she would be safe in the end. However, not long after, Chu Qingyan would recall what she thought and said today. She hated herself immensely. Why did she refuse to practice martial arts in the first place? That omnipotent person who was so strong that no one could threaten him would one day be powerless. The heavy rain washed away many things, revealing its original appearance. But it also drowned many things, hiding it. Chapter 185. The rain continued to fall, and dark clouds covered the city, indicating that today's rain would not stop so soon. Looking outside, other than a curtain of rain, nothing could be seen. If she didn't know the time, she would have thought that it was still late at night. In the shabby inn, there were a few broken lanterns hanging. When the wind blew in, the flames would be blown askew from time to time. If she wasn't in the middle of it, she would have thought that this was the set of a horror movie. Apart from them, there were no other guests in the entire inn. Fortunately, there were many of them, otherwise, it would have been very deserted. Chu Qingyan sighed softly, feeling that doing nothing was very boring. Meanwhile, the retired emperor didn't stop eating the pastries at all. He was very satisfied and relishing in the taste. Chu Qingyan really didn't understand why the retired emperor, who had always been accustomed to all kinds of delicacies in the world, would have a special liking for her pastries. Xiao Su, who was sipping tea at the side, looked at the pouring rain outside. His eyes were still indifferent, as if this heavy rain didn't affect him at all. Suddenly his sleeve was tugged. He turned his head and looked at the person beside him, asking with his eyes, "Big Ice Cube, has the retired emperor always liked to eat desserts?" She really couldn't answer this question after much thought. When Xiao Su heard this, he looked up at his imperial grandfather, who was eating happily, and a trace of indescribable emotion welled up in his eyes. Grandfather didn't like desserts, but grandmother liked to eat them, and also liked to make them. After grandmother passed away, grandfather started to try eating pastries. So that's how it is. Chu Qingyan nodded. At this time Xiao Su faintly added, "The pastries you make have grandmother's taste." Chu Qingyan was startled. She bit her lip and looked at the retired emperor. who was holding a pastry in one hand and a teacup in the other. His expression was so satisfied that it was as if he was enjoying the most beautiful thing in the world. But those were clearly the most ordinary pastries. The previous Sichuan emperors had always passed the throne to the next successor before the death of the previous emperor. Only the previous emperor had abdicated the throne to the crown prince when he was in the age of knowing destiny. The current Sichuan emperor was Emperor Sichuan. She remembered the rumors she had heard in Jingdo. The previous empress had passed away from a serious illness. The retired emperor, who was immersed in state affairs, was inconsolable. After dealing with the funeral of his beloved empress, not even a month had passed before he passed the throne to the Sichuan emperor, and left the world in grief. You won't know how strong the wine is until you are drunk. You won't know how deep the wine is until you have loved. Only when you lose something would you know how to cherish it. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened slightly. That was why the retired emperor left the place where he was heartbroken, and roamed the world as his home. Therefore, because her pastries had the shadow of imperial grandmother, she followed her all the way and used all kinds of methods to trick those pastries into her hands. Then, should she prepare more pastries for imperial grandfather to eat in the future? Seeing the little fellow's red eyes, Xiao Su couldn't help but say, "You don't need to go out of your way to satisfy grandfather. Just pretend you don't know anything." Chu Qingyan was moved. Living in one's own world and fantasizing that the food in one's hands was made by one's lover, one's heart would be filled with happiness. But grandfather is very pitiful. Chu Qingyan sighed softly. You didn't cherish it back then, and now you regret it. This is what it means to reap what you sow. Xiao Su's eyes were filled with complex emotions. However, when he spoke to the little fellow, his tone was still indifferent, as if he didn't have any feelings. Chu Qingyan looked at the retired emperor, who was amused by himself, and shook her head. Then she would pretend she didn't know anything. Perhaps this was the only way she could help the retired emperor, who lived in the past. A person who lived in the past was still happy. If the pillar of support that they relied on to survive was broken, they would probably lose hope in life and live in fear, unease, and regret all day long, burying oneself in state affairs and neglecting the love of one's life, to the point of endless regret in the end. This kind of emperor was a wise ruler in the eyes of the common people, but in the eyes of his wife, he was an unqualified lover. Big Ice Cube, I'll go play 5 in a row with grandfather. Chu Qingyan picked up the chessboard and quickly walked towards the retired emperor. When the retired emperor saw her rushing over, he immediately protected the pastries in front of him. Stinking brat, what are you trying to do? Let me tell you, I won't give you these pastries. If it was in the past, she would definitely say that she didn't care at all. However, now that she knew the truth, she no longer cared about these things with him. Instead, she felt that this kind of retired emperor was so cute that it made one's heart ache. After taking off his dragon robe, he could finally live for himself. But there was no one by his side to laugh and curse. Grandfather, don't worry, I won't think about your pastries. Come, let's play chess. Chu Qingyan opened the door, and Xining immediately placed 2 black and white chess boxes. The retired emperor suspiciously looked her up and down. You know how to play chess? I don't. She had never touched chess before. Then you still want to play with me? The retired emperor rolled his eyes at her. We're not playing chess. Then do you want to play marbles with me? The retired emperor bluntly laughed. Retired emperor, you've really had enough. Let's compete in 5 in a row. Chu Qingyan finished speaking and explained the rules under his puzzled gaze. Who knew that just as she finished speaking, the retired emperor burst out laughing. Stinking brat, you'll be beaten very miserably by me. Chu Qingyan felt that she was being looked down upon. In any case, she had competed in modern times, alright? Whether it's a mule or a horse, won't you know once you take it out for a walk? Alright, since you're bent on losing, I'll fulfill your wish. Come, I'm old. And as the saying goes, respect the old and cherish the young. Then I won't be polite. I'll take the white chess piece first. The retired emperor took the chess box and took the lead to place a chess piece. Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. The retired emperor was simply displaying his thick skin to the extreme. However, the other party had already placed a chess piece, so she also began to seriously play chess. Xiao Su's gaze withdrew from the wind and rain outside, and landed on the noisy little world beside him. The little fellow was racking his brains while Imperial Grandfather was drinking tea and singing a little tune, constantly mocking him. The rumbling sound of the thunderstorm gradually faded away, leaving only the sound of these two people's incessant bickering. Xiao Su felt that at this moment, his heart was incomparably peaceful. "I've won again. Stinking brat, you owe me another plate of snow jade jelly. Ha ha ha." In the entire inn, other than the sound of the rain, there was only the retired emperor's triumphant cheers. The servants who didn't have any tasks were also attracted by this lively scene, and surrounded the table. This was the so-called true gentleman who didn't speak while watching chess, but the chatter on the side was like a market. "Little young master, if you make this move, that place will be taken by old master first. Little young master, you made a mistake there. Aya, this is bad, it's been taken. Hualing Muling." And the others were all jumping around on the side. Chu Qingyan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She was the one who was jumping around. "All right. May I ask if you are the reinforcements that the monkey invited? All of you, report to this lady." Chapter 186. I lost again. Chu Qingyan felt that she had never lost so miserably before. TSK, the 30th plate of pastries. "Stinky brat, let's make a deal. I don't want the same thing. Otherwise, it doesn't count." Emperor Emeritus stroked his beard and said proudly. He was the happiest when he saw Yen Las being defeated, haha. Chu Qingyan cleaned up the chessboard again while crying in her heart. She just wanted to make Imperial Grandfather happy out of kindness. How did she lose herself all of a sudden? This Imperial Grandfather was too disrespectful. Forget it. She had to finish walking the path she chose even if she had to kneel. Just as Chu Qingyan finished putting away the chess pieces, a tall shadow suddenly covered her side. She looked up and saw the big ice cube standing beside her, reaching out a finger and lightly pointing at her position. If she guessed correctly, the big ice cube wanted to play chess with Imperial Grandfather? Thus she immediately abdicated. Xiao Su sat down and casually said to Emperor Emeritus, "Respect the old and love the young. You go first." Emperor Emeritus said with a faint smile, "It's rare that you're willing to play chess with me. I have nothing to do." Xiao Su pushed the chess box in front of him and said indifferently. Emperor Emeritus chuckled. "Isn't it because your child lost so miserably that you can't bear to see it?" Imperial Grandfather was half right. The defeat that appeared on the little fellow's face just now really made him feel that it was a bit dazzling. The other half was that the little fellow was undisciplined by nature. If she was asked to make a few plates of pastries, it would probably depend on her mood. She lost so thoroughly this time, he was afraid that she would develop a fear of pastries in the future. It was rare for her to have the mood to fiddle with something. If this interest was erased, she would probably never touch these pastries again. His veil covered his face, so no one knew what he was thinking at this time. Since Imperial Grandfather wants to love the young, then grandson won't be polite. Xiao Su picked up a black chess piece between his middle and index fingers. Ignoring Imperial Grandfather's long-winded words, he placed the black chess piece first. The retired emperor didn't expect that he would strike first to gain the initiative. He muttered that he wasn't filial at all, and then the white chess piece followed. Chu Qingyan felt that sometimes the way Big Ice Cube got along with the retired emperor was like a family. It was completely different from the way he got along with the Sichuan emperor. Her gaze landed on that pair of slender hands. The black chess pieces were glossy, contrasting with the fair skin of his fingertips. The joints of his fingers were distinct. It was hard to imagine that such a pair of hands could simultaneously wield a sword on the battlefield and play chess. It was the most elegant pair of hands she had ever seen. It was even more beautiful and powerful than a woman's hand. Chu Qingyan came back to her senses when she heard a cheer beside her. She saw that the situation was one-sided. The white pieces covered the chessboard, but all the paths were blocked by the black pieces. There were very few opportunities to form a line. The retired emperor was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. In the end, he could only spread out his hands and admit defeat. Again. Xiao Su took back the chess piece, and didn't give the retired emperor any time to react before saying directly, "The retired emperor, who was about to leave his seat and slip away, could only sit down and continue to fight. Thus, for the entire afternoon, the hall was filled with one sentence after another. Again. In everyone's eyes, the retired emperor was sweating more and more. In the end, Xiao won 25 plates of pastries for Chu Qingyan, so he still lost 5 plates. At this time, Xiao put the chess piece back into the box and didn't make another move. That's all for today. The retired emperor let out a sigh of relief. He was finally let off. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. Chu Qingyan's heart was slightly moved. Big Ice Cube not only helped her relieve the pressure of those 30 plates of pastries, but he also didn't cause Imperial Grandfather to suffer heavy losses. At the very least, he won 5 plates of pastries. Both sides took care of each other appropriately. It had to be said that if Big Ice Cube was in the modern world, he would definitely be a good son in the eyes of his parents and a good husband in the eyes of his wife. The conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law wouldn't exist at all. Although he lost in the end without any dignity, at least he didn't lose terribly. The retired emperor winked at Chu Qingyan. Don't forget, there are still 5 plates. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. He was still thinking about it at this time. This was a real foodie. 5 plates were nothing. She nodded straightforwardly. Xiao took back the chess piece and went upstairs. The retired emperor also rubbed his stomach and went upstairs after eating, drinking, and playing to his heart's content. Chu Qingyan felt that it was quite boring to play alone, so she gave the chessboard to Turin and Ethereal to play by themselves. She also went upstairs. While Chu Qingyan and the others were having fun in the main hall, the 3 shrewd women in the kitchen were secretly plotting. Tonight, I will put the knockout drug in the water jar. As long as their maidservants cook, they will use the water. When the time comes, hee. The scarred chef couldn't help but laugh sinisterly. All right, let's do that. When the time comes, let me play with that delicate young master for 2 days before sending him to the brothel. His appearance will definitely be liked by many officials and nobles. When the time comes, we can sell him for a good price. The shrewd woman's eyes flashed with a faint light, which made her white and thick face even more terrifying. Then I want that maidservant in green clothes. She looks like water spirit. The fat man's saliva was about to flow out. All right. I'll give you the green girl, and give that green girl to him. The shrewd woman pointed at the scarred chef. These people hadn't succeeded yet, but they were already thinking about how to divide the spoils. The dark kitchen emitted a rancid smell. At this time, the men in black clothes who were sticking close to the outer wall of the kitchen heard the secret plot from inside. They curled their lips and revealed a cold smile. Their fingers curled slightly, and the dozens of men in black clothes behind them nodded and flipped through the window. The shrewd woman and the others only felt the candlelight flicker. When they opened their eyes, they saw that there seemed to be something flashing under their necks. They suddenly woke up with a start. Weren't the things under their necks just large knives? Trembling, they turned their heads to look, and saw more than 10 men in black clothes standing in front of them with swords drawn. Gloominess and death instantly filled their surroundings. The 3 were so frightened that their bodies went soft, and they knelt on the ground one after another. Heroes, please spare our lives. Heroes, please spare our lives. We are just doing a small business. If you want money, you can go and find the guests of my inn. They come from rich families and are much richer than us commoners. The shrewd woman immediately turned her head and directed their gazes to the people in the main hall. We don't want money. A man in black clothes slowly walked out. He looked at the 3 people coldly and said in a low voice, Then what do you want? No matter what you want, as long as we have it, we will give it to you immediately. The fat man was so scared that he couldn't even speak clearly. We don't want anything. We only want you to cooperate with us to do one thing, and we will spare your lives. The leader of the men in black clothes said coldly. All right, no matter if it's climbing a mountain of knives or falling into a pot of boiling oil, we will follow your orders. You are still in the business of killing people and robbing people. The leader of the men in black mocked. He turned around and raised his hand to signal his subordinates to put away their weapons. He said coldly, You just have to listen to my orders at night. Chapter 187. Dinner was prepared by Huang Yi as usual. In the kitchen, Huang Yi was carefully cutting vegetables with a knife in her hand. At this time, the scarred chef came in with a pot of green vegetable leaves. "Miss, these vegetables are very fresh. Do you want me to make a dish for your master?" Huang Yi turned her head and saw that the vegetables were indeed very fresh. There were water droplets on the leaves, and there was some soil at the roots. It seemed that these vegetables were just picked from the fields. The scarred chef saw her gaze fall on the vegetables and immediately pushed the basket forward. "Miss Huang Yi, you don't have to be so polite. I should be the one to cook for you. Who would have thought that your culinary skills are better than mine? Also, you gave me enough money. These vegetables aren't worth much." Although Huang Yi was a bit moved, young Princess Consort's instructions were still in her ears, so she still shook her head and declined. "No, thank you, big brother." Huang Yi finished speaking and continued to cut the vegetables. Luckily, young Princess Consort told her to prepare some ingredients that were easy to carry around and wouldn't spoil easily. Otherwise, in this kind of environment, where would she find these ingredients to cook with? The scarred chef saw that the other person didn't appreciate his kindness and couldn't help but feel a bit unhappy. He originally wanted to use this matter to establish some friendships and pave the way for the following matters. However, these people were very vigilant. When dinner was ready, Huang Yi ordered the servants to bring it out. Chu Qingyan and the others were already sitting around the table. When the food was placed, everyone started to move their chopsticks. "Stinky brat, don't forget that you still owe me 5 plates of pastries." The Emperor Emeritus bit into a bun and reminded her word by word, as if he was afraid that she wouldn't acknowledge the debt. Chu Qingyan's hand that was holding the vegetables paused. She looked at the Emperor Emeritus who was glaring at her and felt a bit helpless. "Grandfather, after being together for so long, you still don't trust my character?" The Emperor Emeritus looked like he didn't care. "In any case, you can't go back on your words." She felt drunk too. At the dinner table, the two passed the time in jest. Xiao Su always ignored their bickering. After dinner, Huang Yi led the servant girls to clean up. Chu Qingyan wandered around the main hall to digest the food. Ah! The bowl fell to the ground and shattered. Chu Qingyan looked over and saw Huang Yi and a servant girl squatting down to clean up the debris. When she walked over, she heard the servant girl say to Huang Yi, "Sister Huang Yi, what's wrong with you today? Why are you so absent-minded?" "I'm fine." Huang Yi looked up and saw the young Princess Consort standing to the side. She immediately stood up and bowed. "Huang Yi, come with me," Chu Qingyan said to Huang Yi as she let the servant maids clean up the debris on the ground. Thus, the two of them walked to a secluded corner. Chu Qingyan turned around and looked at her. "Why do you feel so uneasy today?" She had already noticed it during dinner today. She originally thought that it was normal for a girl to be a little emotional, but now it seemed that something was wrong. Huang Yi heard the young Princess Consort ask and no longer pondered on it. She spoke her doubts. When this servant was cooking in the kitchen these past 2 days, this servant felt that the smell in the kitchen was a little strange. "At first, I didn't think much of it, but today this smell is getting stronger. It seems that something is wrong. I searched for half a day, but I don't know where the smell is coming from. So this servant feels uneasy." "Strange smell?" Chu Qingyan furrowed her brows in confusion. "Take me to see." Huang Yi nodded. Chu Qingyan led Xining and followed Huang Yi into the kitchen. Before they entered the kitchen, a pungent smell hit them. Chu Qingyan frowned and used a brocade handkerchief to cover her nose and mouth. She stepped through the doorway. The dark kitchen, old wooden boards, and mottled traces everywhere. If it wasn't for the knives, pots, and pans placed inside, it was hard to imagine that this dirty and messy place was a kitchen. Chu Qingyan walked to the knife table. Some of the knives were rusted and were still placed on the table. The other knives were greasy and reflected the light of the lamps. On the chopping board, there were knife marks everywhere. There were also unknown things stuck on them. Flies were flying everywhere. It was nauseating. Huang Yi saw the young Princess Consort's brows furrowed and immediately explained, "Mistress, Huang Yi didn't use these things to cook. She used everything we brought from the Fu." Chu Qingyan nodded. She always trusted Huang Yi. Chu Qingyan's gaze was drawn to the large knives hanging on the wall. She asked in confusion, "What kind of food needs such large knives?" Huang Yi sized up the knives and shook her head. This servant also doesn't understand. This servant has been cooking for so many years, but this servant has never seen a dish that needs such knives. Chu Qingyan's gaze moved down. She saw that near the chopping board, there were some black and purple marks. She pointed and asked, "Do you know what this is?" Huang Yi moved closer to take a look. Maybe it's the bloodstains left behind when the chicken or fish was killed. Chu Qingyan looked at the large knives and then looked at the bloodstains. She felt uneasy, but she didn't know where this uneasiness came from. At this time, the small door of the back kitchen was opened. The scarred chef walked out, wiping his hands on his apron. He hadn't thought that Chu Qingyan's group would be here. His expression was panicked at first, then he calmed down. He smiled and greeted. "Little Gongzi, you didn't play in the hall, but came to this filthy place. Aren't you worried that you'll dirty your shoes?" "I'm not that precious," Chu Qingyan responded faintly, but when her gaze landed on the blood-stained apron, she couldn't help but ask, "Scarred master, this is?" The scarred chef rubbed his hands and said with a smile, "I just went to the small storeroom to kill a sheep. I didn't have time to wash it before you saw it." Chu Qingyan's black eyes turned, and then she walked in the direction he had come from. This young master has never seen the scene of a chicken or a sheep being killed. Let's go see." The moment Chu Qingyan finished speaking, the scarred chef saw that the situation wasn't good. He immediately took a step back and blocked the small door. He was tall and strong, so the small door was blocked by him. Chu Qingyan pretended to be impatient and said, "Scarred master, what are you doing? That place is too messy. It hasn't been cleaned up yet. If you see it, you won't be able to eat or sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. So it's better if you don't go." Although the scarred chef's words were persuasive, his tone was very firm. Chu Qingyan retracted her foot and said with a smile, "Scarred master is so considerate. Then this young master won't disturb you. You can go about your business. Huang Yi Xining, let's go out." Nodding at the scarred chef, Chu Qingyan left with the 2 servant girls. Once out of the kitchen, Chu Qingyan quickly walked towards the stairs. She wanted to tell Big Ice Cube about what she had discovered just now. The scarred chef looked at Chu Qingyan's figure and swept a glance at the kitchen. His eyes were fierce. It looked like he had to get rid of these people tonight, to avoid any more trouble. So he turned and left the kitchen. He wanted to discuss with them and make a move in advance. Chapter 188. Chu Qingyan quickly went upstairs, and then pushed open the door. Xiao raised his head when he heard the sound. Seeing her panting appearance, he raised his brows and asked, "What happened?" Chu Qingyan quickly walked in front of him and anxiously said, "Big Ice Cube, I found that this inn is very strange. When I went into the kitchen just now, I found that there was a rotten smell in that place. It was very pungent." Xiao put down the book in his hand and beckoned for her to sit down. "There's no rush, you can speak slowly." Chu Qingyan sat down on the chair in front of him. "Their chopping board is very big, much bigger than the ones in our fu. The knives are twice the size of normal knives. Normal knives are rusty and it's obvious that they haven't been used in a long time, but those large knives are very sharp. It's obvious that they are used often. But think about it, who would use such large knives to cook?" Xiao nodded, indicating for her to continue. Chu Qingyan thought back to the scene just now and picked out the main points. "I met that chef in the kitchen. His hands were covered in blood that he hadn't wiped clean, and his apron was also covered in blood. He said that he was going to slaughter sheep, but the rain has been so heavy these past 2 days, where would they buy sheep? Also, Hualing brought people to check the inn before, and didn't find any animals. So what are you suspecting?" Xiao's tone was faint, so faint that no one noticed the persuasion in his words. Chu Qingyan hesitated and was a bit uncertain, but she raised her head and looked at the person in front of her. She slowly said, "I suspect that this is a black inn that kills people and steals their goods." Just as she finished speaking, she saw a hint of a smile appear in the Big Ice Cube's eyes. It was as if the light waves were shattered and rippled in his eyes. It was too beautiful to be absorbed. She was a bit stunned. This was the first time she saw the Big Ice Cube smile. Xiao stroked her head and said in a gratified tone, "Your analysis is good. You've improved." Although Chu Qingyan was happy to be praised by Big Ice Cube, it was not the right time to talk about it. Hearing Big Ice Cube's tone, Chu Qingyan suddenly had a thought. Big Ice Cube, did you know it from the beginning? Xiao Su withdrew his hand and looked at her calmly. Leave everything to Ben Wang. You don't have to worry. As soon as she finished speaking, she knew that Big Ice Cube had his own plans, so she nodded in relief. Sigh, I feel like Big Ice Cube is making me feel more and more secure, isn't it? Chu Qingyan leaned on the table and looked at him seriously. Although the Big Ice Cube was wearing a mask, she never got tired of looking at him. She didn't know what she was looking at. Xiao Su picked up the unfinished book and let the little fellow look at it. He was already used to the little fellow's inexplicable actions. By the time Chu Qingyan went upstairs, the scarred chef and the others had already begun to move. The fat man was holding the candle given to him by the black-clothed man. Inside was a high-level hallucinogenic incense that could knock people unconscious. He slowly walked towards the lobby. When Hualing saw him come out, he asked as usual, "Shopkeeper, what are you doing?" The fat man laughed. "The candles in the lobby aren't bright enough. I'm worried that if the rain gets heavier at night, it won't be enough to light the room, so I specially brought out the high candles I bought before." Hualing nodded. Shopkeeper is considerate. Ethereal, who had been sitting in the lobby the entire time, slowly walked over when he saw this. "I've never seen this high candles before. Let me see. This is just a normal." Before the fat man could finish speaking, Ethereal had already taken it and was playing with it in his hand. Hualing smiled as he explained for Ethereal, "He's just interested in the powder, rouge and candles. Let him see it and he'll return it to you after he sees it." The fat man spat out a sentence in his heart when he heard this. So it was a sissy. Ethereal looked at the fat man and knew what he was thinking. He looked at Hualing and signaled for him to restrain himself. Hualing shook his head without caring, acting like he didn't see anything. Ethereal carelessly rubbed the high candles before throwing them back into the fat man's hands. He had a look of disgust. "Really is normal." The fat man's face turned dark. "Be careful, I'll cut you into 8 pieces later." Hualing saw Ethereal leave with his hands behind his back and his eyes flashed. He turned to the fat man and said, "Then shopkeeper, I'll leave it to you." The fat man felt that these words were simply amnesty. He immediately nodded and changed the candles in the lobby. When the candles were lit, the fat man's lips revealed a vicious smile. "In a bit, I'll have you all die without a grave." That black-clothed man had said that because these people were too vigilant, the candles would only take effect after an hour. Then they would wait a bit before coming back to collect the corpses. Gradually, the guards in the hall began to feel dizzy and faint. Then they slowly fell to the ground. After an hour, the people in the lobby were all lying on the ground. The shrewd woman's group of 3 followed the black-clothed man out. The black-clothed man in the lead looked around the lobby and nodded in satisfaction. The shrewd woman was a bit worried as she asked, "The people downstairs have all been taken care of. What about the people upstairs? This hallucination fragrance is everywhere." "It's the same upstairs," the black-clothed man in the lead explained in disdain. The shrewd woman and the others were relieved. She rubbed her hands together and said in a nervous voice, "You promised us before that once everyone was taken care of, you would leave these corpses for us. Does that still count? Have you ever heard of killing a donkey after it has outlived its usefulness?" The black-clothed man in the lead suddenly revealed a sinister smile. The shrewd woman's group of 3 suddenly opened their eyes wide and took a few steps back. The fat man angrily pointed at the black-clothed man and said, "You don't care about the righteousness of the underworld and go back on your words. If it wasn't for us, would you have taken care of these people so easily?" "Righteousness of the underworld? You've been in the underworld for so long. Don't you know what it means to be a villain? But I do have to thank you for your help. Don't worry, we'll let you die a quick death." The black-clothed man in the lead took a step back. The black-clothed men behind him immediately stepped forward, planning to surround the 3 people. The scarred chef saw that the situation was not good. He pulled out the big knife at his waist and said to his 2 companions, "Let's go." "Want to leave? It's too late." As soon as the black-clothed man in the lead finished speaking, the 3 black-clothed men stabbed at them. The remaining black-clothed men quickly went to the stairs, planning to go upstairs and take down the people upstairs. The black-clothed man in the lead turned to go to the center of the lobby, but from the corner of his eyes, he saw the shrewd woman's group of 3 actually dodging his subordinates' swords. The 3 of them stood back to back and looked at him fiercely. Then, they looked for an opening and planned to escape. "Don't let a single one of them go." The black-clothed man in the lead did not expect more trouble. His tone was gloomy. And at this time, the black-clothed man in the lead realized that none of the black-clothed men upstairs came down. He suddenly had a bad feeling. Turning his head, on the stairs, a black slender figure stood with his hands behind his back, as if he was looking down on everyone. "Since you're here, then don't leave." As soon as the voice fell, the guards who were still staggering stood up in unison. Chapter 189. Hualing waved his hand, and the guards immediately lit up their weapons, standing off against the black-clothed people in the lobby. How could it be like this? Did the candles not have any effect? The fat man had already forgotten his situation as he asked in disbelief. A clear voice sounded out. "If it had any effect, would the 3 of you still be standing there without being affected?" Chu Qingyan's hands were supporting her chin as she leaned against the railing. Her voice was innocent, but her lips were curled into a smile that wasn't a smile. The 3 people below, and the black-clothed people all felt that the 2 people standing on the stairs were too dazzling. The wild winds outside did not stop as the dark clouds pressed down and torrential rain began to pour down. The entire world fell into darkness once again. Other than the flickering candlelight in the lobby, they could only vaguely see each other's faces. The atmosphere was cold and the flames were about to erupt. Chu Qingyan was infected and she couldn't help holding her breath. When the leader of the black-clothed men saw that his plan had failed, he didn't want to delay any longer. He waved his hand at the black-clothed men behind him. Immediately, dozens of black-clothed men took out their bows and arrows. The tips of the arrows were aimed in 2 directions, upstairs and downstairs. Chu Qingyan looked at the arrows that were glowing with a green light and narrowed her eyes. These arrows were poisonous. Xiao did not ask who these black-clothed people were, or why they were here as he directly gave the order. "Kill." These people were all death warriors, there was no need to say anything else. "Shoot." The black-clothed leader waved his hand and several dozen arrows flew towards the lobby and upstairs. Hualing and Ethereal dodged the arrows and flipped behind the black-clothed people. With a wave of their swords, they cut down many arrows. Without the arrows, Hualing's group lost most of their control, and the 2 sides fell into a chaotic battle. 3 or 4 arrows flew towards Chu Qingyan, and she moved back in fear. Suddenly, a figure flashed in front of her, and with a wave of his sleeve, the arrows changed directions and stabbed into the wall. Xiao turned to look at the frightened little fellow and said with a frown, "Didn't you learn Qinggong?" Chu Qingyan wanted to cry, but had no tears. The danger came too suddenly. She had already forgotten that she knew Qinggong. Xiao's gaze turned towards the hall, and met with the leader of the men in black. He reached out and pulled her back. "Stay in the room. Qingyi will protect you." Chu Qingyan nodded. The situation was chaotic, and she couldn't do anything to help. She didn't want to be a burden to everyone, so she turned around and entered the room. Hearing the sound of the door closing behind him, Xiao flew down. The leader of the black-clothed men drew his sword and charged towards him. Xiao dodged the fierce attack, and casually sucked towards the ground. A long sword flew up from the ground and he caught it, and began to fight with it. At this moment, Chu Qingyan was sitting in her room uneasily. She didn't know how the battle was going down there. What she was most worried about was whether the big ice cube would be injured. Qingyi had already received the order, and was guarding the room. She saw the little Wang Fei's uneasy expression and said unconcernedly, "Little Gongzi, it seems like you haven't seen any great storms before. This kind of scene is a common occurrence for our master." Common occurrence? How common did it have to be for it to be described with these words? Why are there so many people who want to kill your master? She couldn't help asking. Qingyi didn't want to answer at first, but thinking of how Hualing had mentioned to her that this little Wang Fei was not light in her master's heart, she forced herself to answer. There are many people who want master to disappear from the world, and not be able to participate in the battle for the position of crown prince. There are people who want to create a strong enemy in the border. When she said this, Qingyi suddenly stopped. Her expression was serious as she raised her hand to have Chu Qingyan not speak. She turned around and pointed her sword at the closed door, holding her breath. Just as Qingyi was preparing herself for battle, the door was suddenly kicked open. 3 injured men who were leaning against each other saw Chu Qingyan in the room. They smiled sinisterly and said, "I knew she was hiding here." Chu Qingyan saw the shrewd woman, the fat man, and the scarred chef. She gave a cold laugh. "So it's you guys. Little Gongzi, I wanted to properly love you, but it seems like I can't." The shrewd woman stepped in, but Qingyi blocked in front of Chu Qingyan first. She pointed her sword at them. "What do you want to do?" "What do we want to do? Does it even need to be said? Of course we want to capture your little Gongzi," the scarred chef said viciously. Now that the lobby had become a battlefield, they couldn't leave. If they stayed any longer, they would only be caught in the crossfire. The only way they could think of was to hold Chu Qingyan hostage and jump down from the window. They could have just snuck out from the second floor, but they felt that Chu Qingyan and her group were not just any rich young masters. They might even hunt them down. Thus, they needed to have a bargaining chip in their hands. Chu Qingyan, who looked so weak, became their bargaining chip. Seeing how respectful those people were to her, they guessed that her status was not low at all. Therefore, they risked their lives to kidnap her. It was only then that Chu Qingyan realized what they were planning. She was filled with disdain as she said, "I advise you to surrender now. Surrender without a fight. Do you think that with the human lives that we have stained our hands with, we will have a way out? Little Gongzi, don't be too naive." The shrewd woman sneered. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. "That means the blood in your kitchen is not from animals." "Haha, of course not. Since we opened this shop, we have never spent a single cent to buy meat." The fat man laughed loudly. Could it be? Chu Qingyan felt her stomach churn. That's right. In that little storeroom, there are still a few bodies that have not been processed. If it wasn't for you guys, they would have been dried into meat jerky by now. The scarred man chuckled. His laughter was indescribably horrifying. Chu Qingyan looked at them in disbelief. Although she had heard of a black shop, she had never seen a black shop that killed people and ate human flesh. At this moment, her 3 views were turned upside down and she couldn't help but want to vomit. What a pity. If it wasn't for these things, you guys would have already become dead souls under our knives. The fat man said regretfully. The shrewd woman wanted to interrupt and say something, but she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She immediately growled. "You 2 idiots, can't you see that she is stalling for time? Quickly go grab her and quickly leave." Chu Qingyan didn't expect the 3 of them to wake up so quickly. She shrugged her shoulders. Seeing them approach, she took out the dagger that her father had made for her from her sleeve. She unsheathed it and placed it in front of her chest. Qingyi saw that she was so calm and her heart relaxed. She pointed her sword at the 3 of them. "Don't come any closer, otherwise I won't be polite." "Not polite? You are not even enough to fill the gaps between our teeth." The fat man took out the axe from his waist and stepped forward to chop Qingyi's head. Qingyi quickly raised her sword to block, but unexpectedly, her sword was split in 2. Qingyi couldn't help but retreat a few steps. Just as she steadied herself, she felt a pain in her chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. She was shocked. What a strong internal force. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. She had heard Big Ice Cube say that Qingyi's martial arts were not inferior to the Shaolin Knight Mingwei that he trained. That was why he was assured that she would be protected by Qingyi. Now it seemed that these 3 people were hidden experts. "Who are you guys?" Chu Qingyan looked at them coldly. Chapter 190. The shrewd woman approached step by step, her face bewitching as if she was trying to trick a child. "Little young master, have you heard of the 3 killers of Jianghu? The 3 fools of Jianghu?" Chu Qingyan felt that these 3 people's appearances were quite fitting for this title. However, Qingyi was shocked. Could it be that you guys are the 3 killers of heaven, earth, and man that everyone in Jianghu wanted to punish 7 years ago? Oh, this little girl is quite knowledgeable. What a pity, you're about to go to hell. The shrewd woman held the short spear with both hands. not allowing for any explanation as she swung it towards Qing Yi. Qing Yi was still holding the broken sword in her hand. She raised her hand to block the spear. But the shrewd woman raised her leg and kicked towards her stomach. Qing Yi was caught off guard and flew into the wall. Qing Yi struggled to get up, but she spat out a mouthful of blood. Little young master, run quickly, master is below. Cough cough. Qing Yi. Chu Qingyan was about to go forward, but her hand was grabbed by the fat man who had approached at some point. She stabbed the dagger in her hand towards him. The fat man snorted coldly and reached out to chop her wrist. That dagger fell to the ground as she couldn't hold it. Her hands were tied behind her back, and she was quickly restrained. Chu Qingyan cursed inwardly. Just as she was about to shout, a piece of cloth was stuffed into her mouth. Seeing that Chu Qingyan was restrained, the shrewd woman immediately looked around vigilantly. She heard that the fighting downstairs was still intense, so she said, "Take this opportunity to leave quickly." Yes. The fat man and the scarred chef immediately followed the shrewd woman and flew down from the window. Ignoring the pouring rain, the three of them carried Chu Qingyan and used their qinggong, quickly shuttling through the forest. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes. The wind and rain were too heavy, and she could no longer see the road in front of her. She only felt that these three people's qinggong was outstanding, not inferior to hers at all. Back then, her qinggong was recognized by Turin. It seemed that outside the capital, there were many crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Where do we go? The scarred chef shook the rainwater off his face and asked loudly. To the ferry. The shrewd woman blurted out. Are you crazy? Now that the water level is so high and the storm is so strong. Do you want to be buried in the water and let those fish collect your corpse? The scarred chef's face was full of disapproval. The shrewd woman roared back. If you go back, you'll be caught up very soon. Even if the servants don't chase after you, there are still those men in black. Now you can only take the risk. Don't forget, I'm the best person to cross the river. The two of them were silent. The shrewd woman's words were not without reason. Thus, the three parties reached an agreement and quickly headed towards the ferry. Chu Qingyan's hands were tied tightly, and she couldn't break free at all. She wasn't worried at all, because the big ice cube would definitely come to save her. But looking at the situation now, they were planning to cross the river in the rain. If the big ice cube chased after them, crossing the river in this kind of weather was very dangerous. The rain was getting heavier and heavier. The visibility in front of her was too low. All she could see was a curtain of rain. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt at a loss. No, she could not rely on others for everything. She had to think of a way to save herself. In the inn, Hualing was dealing with two men in black. He didn't know where these men in black came from, but there were so many of them. Moreover, their martial arts weren't bad. They could be considered intermediate-level death warriors. Although they had more people in the beginning, with the addition of Turin and the others, the situation became one-sided. Most of the men in black had already been dealt with. The leader of the men in black was currently fighting with Xiao Su. Xiao Su suddenly looked up at the stairs with an uneasy mind. There was no movement upstairs at all, so he didn't know how the little fellow was doing. When the black-clothed man saw that Xiao Su was distracted, the silver chain hidden in his sleeve flew out and headed straight for Xiao Su's shoulder. The end of the chain had a sharp barb that could pierce through wood. If it had been a human body, it would have pierced through it. Xiao Su came back to his senses. His sword drew a circle in the air, and the chain tightly wrapped around his sword. Seeing this, the black-clothed man fiercely pulled, and Xiao Su took advantage of the opportunity to lean forward. The two of them were less than 3 steps away from each other. They waved their hands and struck each other. Both of their martial arts were strong and powerful. Immediately, the entire inn shook, and the airflow sent many people around them flying. Xiao Su floated down from midair, while the black-clothed man retreated a few steps until one of his feet touched a pillar. Only then did he stop. However, the black cloth covering his face was already soaked with blood, showing that his injury was not light. His Royal Highness martial arts have reached perfection. This old man admires you. We'll fight another day. The leader of the men in black left these words, and then turned to jump out the window. The remaining men in black also followed him. Hualing immediately brought people to chase after them. Xiao Su, who was standing in the middle of the hall, slowly revealed a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He pursed his lips and raised his finger to wipe it as if nothing had happened. Master is missing. Xi Ning, who had already separated from her master downstairs, opened the room at this time, and found that her master was gone. She immediately cried out. When Xiao Su heard this, he stepped on the wooden stairs and flew up to the second floor. Turin, who was counting the men in black, looked over when he heard this. He saw that his master was already impatiently using his martial arts to rush upstairs. This was the first time he saw his master so impatient. He immediately put down what he was doing and rushed up to the second floor. When Xiao Su entered the room, he only saw the unconscious Qing Yi, the dagger lying on the ground, and the wide-open window. Cold wind and heavy rain poured in, chilling the people who entered the room. Qing Yi, wake up. Ethereal went forward and gave her a medicine before trying to wake her up. After a while, Qing Yi slowly woke up. When she saw who was standing in front of her, she immediately coughed lightly and said with difficulty, Master, the little Gongzi was taken away by the 3 demons of heaven, earth, and man. Quickly go and save him. At this time, a guard ran up and reported, Master, when we checked the footprints just now, we found that the people who kidnapped the little Gongzi were heading towards the ferry. All right, let's go. Xiao Su turned around to go downstairs. Turin immediately stopped him. Master, this subordinate has failed in his duty this time. I actually allowed these assassins to sneak into the inn. This subordinate will atone for his mistake and save the little Gongzi. Xiao Su stopped and looked at him. These assassins learned a type of martial arts called ninjutsu. Their ability to hide is comparable to yours. You can't blame yourself for not discovering them in time. You can only say that your skills are not as good as theirs. Yes, this subordinate will strengthen the training from now on. Turin lowered his head in shame. It's just that the storm is so heavy now. This subordinate is worried about you. Leave the little Gongzi's matter to this subordinate. You can wait for this subordinate's news at the inn. Turin felt that his lord was precious, and that there was really no need for him to take such a risk. When Xiao Su heard this, he took a deep look at the boundless horizon. His tone was somewhat ethereal. There's no need to say any more. This prince will go and save him personally. His subordinate was capable, and he trusted him. But this little guy was his person. He had to protect his own people. When Turin saw that his master had made up his mind, he sighed and could only order people to prepare horses and straw raincoats. Lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and the rain was heavy. A black horse took the lead, followed by a group of guards. It was like a sharp arrow moving quickly on the ground. Chapter 191. Chu Qingyan was carried on the fat man's shoulder. Her head was heavy and her feet were light. Her stomach kept churning, and she was about to vomit. She immediately whimpered. The fat man felt her struggle and immediately said angrily, "What's the matter?" Chu Qingyan's mouth was blocked, so she could only continue whimpering. The fat man was a little impatient, and tore away the cloth blocking her mouth. As soon as he took it away, the water immediately flowed down 3,000 feet. The fat man looked at the filth on his body and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as he was about to throw her down, he heard Chu Qingyan leisurely wipe her mouth with the rainwater. She narrowed her eyes and looked at him. "If you dare to throw me, I guarantee that you don't need to cross the river. You can directly cross the Wangchuan River." The fat man heard this and sneered. "You think I don't dare to throw you?" Chu Qingyan raised her chin, looking as if she was at his mercy. At this moment, the shrewd woman glared at the fat man. "At this juncture, don't cause any trouble for me. This person is our protective talisman. Hold on tight. If you fall, you'll suffer." After being threatened by the shrewd woman, the fat man became much more obedient. However, his gaze towards Chu Qingyan was still filled with fierce anger. From afar, they saw a wooden pole with a large horizontal cloth hanging on it. The wind was raging and that horizontal cloth was fluttering in the wind. On it was written a fairy. The shrewd woman and the other two were overjoyed and quickened their pace. As long as they reached the ferry and boarded the boat, everything would be safe. Chu Qingyan's heart sank. She allowed them to bring her closer and closer to the ferry. The rain did not become lighter. Instead, it became heavier and heavier, as if it was going to drown the entire world. Chu Qingyan felt that the rainwater on her face was like beans crashing down. It was a little painful. Coupled with the speed of these people, the pain intensified. However, she could not care so much at this moment. She looked at the approaching ferry and thought about how to get away. Once they reached the ferry, the fat man saw her being thrown to the ground. Fortunately, the ground was built with wooden planks. However, Chu Qingyan could not help but cry out softly. The scarred chef looked at Chu Qingyan, who was crawling up, and spat. I didn't expect a young master with soft skin and tender flesh to be able to endure hardship. If she was crying, we would have killed her long ago. The fat man shook his sore arm in disdain. The shrewd woman glanced at the two. Now is not the time for meaningless discussions. There is a boat. Think of a way to get it over here. The three of them looked in the direction of the shrewd woman's finger and saw a small house next to the ferry. There was a small boat tied to a wooden stake at the entrance of the house, and there was a fire inside the house, proving that there was someone inside. Let's go and take a look. The fat man wanted to grab Chu Qingyan's collar, but she tilted her head and avoided him. Hey! The fat man laughed coldly. He pushed her back and urged, hurry up, short legs. The moment he said that, the scarred chef and the shrewd woman could not help but smile mockingly at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan frowned. She did not want to argue with them. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of the small house. The fat man knocked on the door vigorously. The people inside immediately responded. I'm coming, I'm coming. An old boatman in his 60s opened the door. Before he could see who was outside, there was a large knife on his neck. The old boatman was so scared that he almost fainted. The fat man dragged the old boatman out and pointed at the small boat. He said fiercely, hurry up and unlock that lock for me. Otherwise, I will send you to hell right now. The old boatman was so scared that his legs trembled. Okay. Chu Qingyan could clearly feel that these three people were cruel by nature. They would not let the old boatman go. She was worried. At this moment, the old boatman took out the key on his body and unlocked the heavy lock with trembling hands. The fat man's knife was already hanging above the old boatman's head. It was as if as soon as he unlocked the lock, what awaited him would be a fatal blow. Chu Qingyan bit her lip. What should she do? Due to fear and the heavy rain, the old boatman tried for a long time, but still could not unlock the lock. The fat man was getting impatient and took a step forward. Chu Qingyan caught a glimpse of the oar on the wooden plank from the corner of her eye. She estimated the distance between them and the length of the oar. It was just right. Hua hua. The lock was unlocked. In the blink of an eye, Chu Qingyan took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention. She picked up the oar and slammed it at the fat man's hand. The fat man was caught off guard. His large knife fell into the water beside him. He lost his balance and almost fell into the water. Chu Qingyan had already stepped forward and pulled the frightened old boatman behind her. She held the oar in front of her chest and confronted the three people. You can't kill the innocent. Chu Qingyan looked at them righteously. That slap had used up all of her strength. The fat man was now holding his wrist and screaming, threatening to kill her. The shrewd woman and the scarred chef's faces were very ugly. Under their eyes, the prey actually stretched out her claws. It was simply a great humiliation. Brat, do you think that with your small body and that wooden plank, you can defeat us, the three demons? I suggest you obediently put down the oar. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. The shrewd woman approached her step by step with a sinister smile on her face. Did they really think she was a child? Once she put down the oar, the only thing that awaited the old boatman was death. And she would be captured onto the small boat. They approached step by step while she retreated step by step with the old boatman. When her back hit the wooden plank and she couldn't retreat anymore, Chu Qingyan frowned deeply. Turin had taught her a set of sword skills. Although she wasn't proficient in it, she could still use a few moves. In order to stall for time, she had to use her or to fight them. So she stood up and used the oar as a sword, pointing it at the three people in front of her. I'll go with you. You let this innocent old boatman go. What qualifications do you have to negotiate with the three of us? The scarred chef sneered. Try peaceful means before resorting to force. Since peaceful means don't work, Then we'll just use force. Take out your weapons. Chu Qingyan slowly raised her arm and looked at them with a determined gaze. Ha ha ha. A little girl who hasn't even grown out her hair dares to challenge us. Then let me do it. Brat, watch your skin carefully. The scarred chef pulled out his large knife and walked forward sinisterly. Chu Qingyan gulped. Even Qingyi couldn't defeat them. She didn't have any chance of winning. But this was the only thing she could do. She had to bite the bullet. The large knife whistled over. She nimbly turned around and dodged the sharp tip of the knife. She flipped over and landed behind him. She raised the oar and was about to swing it at him. However, this person seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He stretched out his broadsword to block and then exerted force, causing her to retreat a few steps. Then, his fist landed on her shoulder, causing her to fly straight to the wooden pole. She crashed into the thick wooden pole and broke it. Then she rolled to the ground. Chu Qingyan felt pain in her chest. She spat out a mouthful of blood. When it landed in the water, it immediately scattered into red flowers. The scarred chef walked forward. Just as he was about to stab her again, the sound of the tower bell pierced through the thunder and rain and entered everyone's ears. Then a voice sounded. Wait. Chapter 192. The scarred chef's knife paused in midair, and he cursed. Which blind fool dares to block my way? But the moment he turned his head, he was stunned. Chu Qingyan's chest hurt, and she coughed lightly. But every breath she took affected the wound on her shoulder, and she sucked in a breath of cold air. It was thanks to this pain that she was able to stay awake and not pass out. She raised her head to look in the direction of the sound. Who would suddenly appear? Not far away on the river, a small boat floated down from the front. A youth in white monk robes stood on it, holding a plain paper umbrella. The torrential rain seemed to be blocked by his umbrella, and strings of water droplets flowed down the edge of the umbrella. They were instantly blown away by the wind, and the bean-sized droplets quickly melted into the wind and rain. She couldn't see his face clearly, nor did she need to. She only felt that he was a ray of white light that cut across the horizon, the only pearl in this dark world. One person, one umbrella, one boat, riding the wind and riding the waves, like an immortal flying from the heavens. Chu Qingyan was stunned. Was she hallucinating because of her injury? Was that why she saw Su Jian, who should be in the capital? Fraud. 3 benefactors, the sea of bitterness has no bounds. Turn back to the shore before it's too late. Without using any oars, the small boat stopped in front of the ferry. Su Jian held the umbrella in one hand, and the fingers of the other clasped together, bowing to the people on the shore. A familiar voice, a familiar tone, and a familiar face. Chu Qingyan's first thought was, how did Su Jian fly all the way from the capital city to this place? Master, save us. The moment the old boatman saw Su Jian, he immediately got up and knelt to beg for help. Seeing this, the fat man disliked the old boatman for talking too much. He couldn't help but spin the axe in his hand to chop at the old boatman. Seeing that the axe was about to land on the old boatman, Su Jian raised his hand and waved. The water in the air condensed into the shape of a water arrow, and shot towards the axe. The water arrow and the axe clashed, but in the end, the axe in the fat man's hand was no match for the power of the water arrow, and was sent flying. The axe spun half a circle in the air, and stabbed into a wooden plank. Su Jian's attack was clearly too unexpected, and it immediately deterred everyone. The shrewd woman and the others had not taken him seriously, but now that they saw him send the fat man's weapon flying with a single move, they immediately became vigilant. Grandmaster, we're dealing with some business here. Please don't interfere. The shrewd woman said coquettishly as she winked at Su Jian, trying to persuade him to leave. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. She was already a middle-aged woman, yet she was still trying to act cute like a little girl. It was simply too shameful. Su Jian still clasped his fingers together and bowed. Benefactors, the heavens will not allow you to harm the lives of others. There are too many vengeful souls in your hands who have yet to be reborn. If you do not put down your butcher's knife, what awaits you is a Vici. If the soft approach did not work, he would use the hard approach. When the scarred chef heard this, he said angrily, "Where did this stinky monk come from? How dare you meddle in our business? Do you know who we are?" Whether your status is noble or ordinary, you're just a drop in the ocean. This is not your business. You've already committed grave sins by harming innocent people. Su Jian slowly walked up to the ferry, the bell at his waist fluttering in the wind. Its crisp sound was like the sound of a fairy, cleansing the filth in people's hearts. When the shrewd woman and the others saw him leave the boat, they all took a few steps back. They were afraid of an expert's aura, so they could not help but retreat. A clear sound with each step, and a lotus with each step. Chu Qingyan lay on the ground, looking at the person not far away. He walked closer step by step, but the rain was too heavy, so she could not see clearly. But for some reason, the faint smile at the corner of his mouth entered her eyes. It was neither sad nor happy, neither resentful nor angry. It was noble and proud, like a snow lotus blooming at the corner of his mouth, picking flowers and smiling drunkenly. This sentence suddenly appeared in her mind. A young monk came over on a light boat, holding a white umbrella, a lotus with each step, and a spring breeze with each smile. This scene took root in her memory. Every time she recalled it, she would think that the sky was not filled with raging wind and rain, but with pure and holy lotus petals. Are you willing to lay down your weapons and repent? Su Jian stopped 7 steps away from them. The white umbrella just happened to cover Chu Qingyan, who was sitting in the rain. He looked at the 3 people in front of him with a serious expression. You bald donkey, mind your own business. Get out of our way. We still have to hurry. The fat man was somewhat impatient. He ignored the shrewd woman's expression and shouted at Su Jian. Since you're still so stubborn, then this poor monk will offend you. Su Jian said softly. Ba. When the 3 heard this, they looked at each other and instantly flashed their weapons. If this dragged on, the people from the inn would probably arrive. At most, they would give up on the young master and cross the river no matter what. The rain gradually became heavier. Everyone was drenched. Other than Su Jian, who held a paper umbrella in his hand, his body was dry and clean. The umbrella in his hand covered the ground 3 inches away from him. Chu Qingyan raised her head and saw that the person beside her was pure and clean. She was far better than the 3 evil people in the rain. Great master, if you can't beat them, then quickly run. Chu Qingyan said softly in a hoarse voice. She had never seen Su Jian fight before. She only felt that chanting sutras and Buddhist scriptures suited him better. Fighting had nothing to do with him. Even if his martial arts were strong, these 3 people were not easy to deal with. He could deal with one, but if the 3 of them worked together, it would be a little tricky. Therefore, in order not to implicate too many people, Chu Qingyan whispered to him. Although the rain was very loud, he could clearly hear the voices of the people behind him. He smiled slightly. Don't be afraid. If you don't dare to look, then close your eyes. Chu Qingyan could not help but sigh. That was all she had to say. She hoped that this fraud would not show off. After all, these 3 people were famous in the Jianghu. A fraud against a villain. This scene was too beautiful. She did not dare to look. With the fat man's failure as a precedent, the 3 people decided to attack together. Axes, broadswords, and short spears were all thrown at Su Jian. Su Jian dodged the heavy axe to the left and hit the fat man's wrist with one hand. The axe fell to the ground. With a backhand push, he used 50% of his inner strength to hit the scarred chef's chest. He used the force to change the direction of the broadsword and caught the shrewd woman's short spear. The short spear was sent flying. In just a short moment, he had already dropped the 3 people's weapons. However, he still stood in the same place without moving. Ba, good. Su Jian said with his eyes closed. Chu Qingyan was a little stunned. Although she was very close to him, she still could not see how he attacked. She could only say that his movements were very fast. It was not something that could be seen with the naked eye. At this moment, the 3 people flew into a rage out of humiliation and attacked Su Jian with their bare hands. Chapter 193. The 3 of them were highly skilled. They all rushed toward Su Jian, each taking a position. They cooperated well, not giving him a chance to defend himself. Su Jian chanted Ba softly, then flew up and tapped the scarred chef's shoulder with the tip of his foot. With a light push, the scarred chef knelt on the ground. Seeing this, the fat man flew across the air with a kick. Su Jian raised his hand to block it, using gentleness to counter strength, and sent the fat man, who weighed several 100 pounds, crashing into the ground. The shrewd woman was shocked and angry when she saw that her men had been subdued. From the corner of her eye, she saw Chu Qingyan, who was half sitting on the ground. She immediately thought of a plan and reached out to pull her to her side. But just as her hand was about to touch her shoulder, a sharp arrow pierced through the air and through the shrewd woman's palm. Ah! The shrewd woman's scream pierced through the air. Chu Qingyan turned her head. In the hazy rain, she saw the person on the fierce horse who had put away his bow and arrow and was looking at her. Big Ice Cube. Chu Qingyan could not help but smile. You're finally here. Luckily, I didn't give up. Turin's men quickly surrounded the ferry. When the three demons of heaven, earth and man saw this, their faces turned ashen. They should have been able to escape, but who knew that a bald donkey would appear out of nowhere? Xiao Su dismounted and walked quickly toward Chu Qingyan. When he squatted down to look at her at eye level, he saw the pale little fellow smile at him. Big Ice Cube, you're here. Before Xiao Su could respond, the little fellow in front of him coughed out a mouthful of blood, then fell to the side. He reached out to catch her tottering body. At this moment, her eyes were tightly shut, and there was no trace of blood in them. His eyes narrowed. Empty spirit. Ethereal quickly rushed over, and placed his finger on her wrist to check her pulse. After a moment he looked up and said to his master, "Little master has suffered some internal injuries. He needs to be treated as soon as possible." Xiao Su's expression was terrifyingly dark. At this moment, Turin came forward to ask for instructions. "Master, how should we deal with these three people?" Xiao Su picked up the man on the ground by his waist and said coldly, "Cripple his martial arts." "No. Don't cripple our martial arts." When the three of them heard this, they immediately begged for mercy in fear. Once their martial arts were crippled, they would be crippled. Turin turned around and looked at the three ferocious men. At this moment, he was already trembling with regret for provoking them. He said coldly, "It's too late to regret. This is the price you have to pay." With a wave of his hand, the black-clothed men behind him stepped forward and prepared to make a move. "Master Su Jian, thank you for saving me again." Xiao Su nodded at him before mounting his horse. "I was entrusted by someone to search for my long-lost family. Originally, I was also looking for these three Shas, but I happened to run into almsgiver Chu at the ferry crossing. It was just a simple task." Ba. Su Jian smiled. "No matter what, I still have to thank Master. Now that the rain has not stopped, if Master doesn't mind, you can also rest at the inn for the night." After Xiao Su finished speaking, he conveniently landed on his horse and turned it around to head back in the direction they had come from. At this moment, a guard brought a horse to Su Jian. Su Jian thought for a moment, then took the reins. Xiao Su pulled the ice-cold little fellow into his arms. Her usually healthy and rosy lips were now slightly purple from the cold. His eyes darkened. With one hand protecting her, and the other holding the reins, he quickly rode back to the inn. Ethereal and the others were left behind. They could not catch up no matter how hard they tried. Once they arrived at the inn, everyone was shocked to see their master, who was covered in cold air, and the young princess Consort, who was completely drenched. Xiao Su carried the person in his arms upstairs without stopping. He ordered, "Huang Yi, prepare ginger soup. Xining, LVE, prepare hot water and clean clothes." "Oh yes, yes, yes." The people who had been called out immediately split up to carry out their tasks. Xiao Su kicked open the door and placed the person on the bed. At this time, Xining and LVE had already entered. He immediately ordered, "Change out of your wet clothes. Be careful of the wound on your shoulder." "Yes." The two hurriedly responded. Xiao Su stood to the side, watching them do as they were told. Xining was just about to take off her master's outer clothes when she saw Lord standing in the room like a door god. She immediately asked weakly, "Lord, can you leave first?" Xiao Su frowned. "Why should Ben Wang leave? Don't dawdle. Hurry." LVE wrung the towel dry. Hearing this, she said with a slight smile, "Lord, your clothes are also soaked. Go back to the room and change into a clean set of clothes. Otherwise, when the young princess Consort changes her clothes and your cold air spreads, it won't be good." Xiao felt that it made sense. After giving a few more instructions, he turned and left the room. Xining gave Lve a big thumbs up. Lve shook her head with a smile and said, "Let's change the young princess consort into dry clothes first." "All right." The two quickly changed out of Chu Qingyan's wet clothes. They used hot water to wipe their bodies and quickly put on clean clothes. After they finished, Lve opened the door to let the people outside in. Xiao came in with Ethereal. Ethereal inspected Chu Qingyan's wounds, and then took out his needles. He said to Lord, "Young princess consort's shoulder is heavily injured. Blood clots have blocked her meridians. This subordinate will first unblock her meridians, and let the blood flow smoothly." Xiao nodded. His eyes were fixed on that pale little face. When Ethereal's needles pierced her meridians, large beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Her moist lips were about to be bitten through by her unconsciously. Xiao sat down. His hands held her hand that was tightly gripping the blanket, wanting to pass his body's warmth to her. Ethereal had practiced medicine for many years, and had never had such a difficult time. It was just a simple unpacking of meridians, but his forehead was covered in a thin layer of sweat. The main reason was that the person beside him was too strong. It caused him to think carefully before he inserted each needle. He clearly knew these meridians inside out, and could do it with his eyes closed. Ethereal sighed. If his shimmy saw this scene, she would probably mock him for a long time. Half an hour later, Kong Ling breathed a sigh of relief and took back all the silver needles. He stood up and said to his master, "Young princess consort is fine now. This subordinate will bandage her wound and she will be fine." Xiao took a look at the little guy whose breathing was almost steady, and only then did he feel relieved. But when Ethereal came over with medicine and gauze, Xiao ordered him to put it on the table, and then leave. Ethereal glanced at the unconscious young princess consort on the bed, and then glanced at Lord. He instantly understood. It seemed that Lord still preferred to do things personally for the young princess consort. He didn't know if Lord's abilities had improved after using the young princess consort as a test subject. He was somewhat expectant. But right now, the most important thing for him was to drink a bowl of ginger soup. Achoo. Chapter 194. When she woke up, she felt like she had been crushed by something. Her entire body ached. Chu Qingyan struggled to open her eyes. She wanted to get up, but she accidentally pulled on the wound on her shoulder. She felt a sharp pain and instantly woke her up. She raised her right hand to her left shoulder, and felt the gauze under her clothes. The memories of last night came back one by one. After recalling everything, she sighed. She was injured again. How unlucky. She didn't know how long she would have to rest this time. It would be best if she didn't affect the progress of the big ice cube's journey. Her small movements did not escape Xiao's ears. He got up and walked to the bed. He lifted the bed curtain with one hand and hooked it on a silver hook. Then he sat down by the bed. "How do you feel?" Hearing this, Chu Qingyan raised her head and looked at him with eyes that were faintly watery. At that time, she thought she would lose her little life. But when the big ice cube's figure flashed in her mind, she didn't know where she got the strength to use teleportation to slightly turn her body. Otherwise, that palm would not have pierced her shoulder, but her heart. "I'm fine. I'm fine." Her voice was slightly choked, but she pretended to be fine. Xiao's heart softened. He reached out and tucked her in. He softly said, "It's all in the past. Don't be afraid." It was rare for the big ice cube to be so gentle to her. The lingering fear in her heart was touched. Chu Qingyan sniffled and said, "As expected, the Jianghu is sinister. People's hearts are also sinister. I've never seen such a vicious person. They actually killed their customers, and then sold them to the next customer to eat. Then they killed the next customer. This cycle keeps repeating. I don't know how they feel after making all this money. People's hearts are unfathomable. The outside world is like this. The weak are prey to the strong. This is just the beginning. There are many more terrifying things to face. If you're afraid, this king will send someone to send you back to the capital, and let you be with your parents. At the same time, this king will also send people to protect you." He said he would protect her, but she was injured in just a few days. Xiao Su began to doubt if he could really protect her on this journey. When he saw her vomit blood last night, his heart suddenly hurt. Since last night, he began to doubt himself. Actually, his decision to take her away from the capital was wrong. No, no, no. I'm not afraid at all. Even if I was injured by a palm, even if that large blade fell, I never gave up hope. I know that you will come back to save me. When Chu Qingyan heard that Jiang Yi wanted her to return to the capital, she immediately panicked. It was not easy for her to finally be able to accompany Big Ice Cube. She did not want to give up halfway. What's more, it was not even halfway yet. It was only a few days away from the capital. No, Big Ice Cube, don't make me go back, all right? Chu Qingyan reached out with her uninjured hand and grabbed his hand. Her eyes were glistening with tears as she spoke pitifully. Don't act like a spoiled child. Speak properly. Every time she showed this kind of expression, no matter how hard his heart was, it would be softened by her. Xiao Su rubbed his forehead, feeling a bit helpless. Seeing this move work again, Chu Qingyan rejoiced in her heart. She planned to act like a spoiled child to the end. Big Ice Block, you don't understand me at all. I just got injured and you want to chase me away. You don't care about me at all. Woo woo. Chu Qingyan covered her eyes with her hands. Her voice was mournful, as if she was crying her heart out. Xiao Su crossed his arms as he looked at the little fellow who was secretly peeking at him from between her fingers. When she realized she had been discovered, she quickly closed her fingers and sobbed. Although he knew she was pretending for some reason, he still surrendered in his heart. All right, this king didn't chase you away. Don't make yourself sound so pitiful. Otherwise, if Imperial Grandfather heard it, he would think that this king didn't want you to fulfill your promise to him. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she immediately removed her claws. Her face was filled with pride and there were no tears. But seeing that the person in front of her had an expression that said I knew it, she laughed and cleverly changed the topic. Then how are my injuries? When can I get out of bed? She blinked and asked. You didn't have a fever last night, which means your wounds aren't infected. So as long as you rest, you'll be alive and kicking again very soon. It wasn't that Xiao Su didn't see through her thoughts, but he still let her be. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan looked at the Big Ice Block whose eyes were slightly bloodshot and couldn't help asking. Did you not sleep at all last night? If he hadn't taken care of her for an entire night, he wouldn't have appeared in the room so coincidentally, and his eyes wouldn't have a faint tiredness. Xiao Su rubbed her head. It's nothing, I just couldn't sleep. Then quickly go and rest. I'm fine here. I have Xining and the others to take care of me, so don't worry. Chu Qingyan immediately urged him to rest. Xiao Su saw that although her face was a little pale, she was still in good spirits. Most importantly, she needed to rest now, so he nodded and got up. Xiao Su walked out of the room and saw Ethereal waiting at the door. You want to go in and take Qingyan's pulse? Ethereal shook his head and said with a worried expression. This subordinate wants to take a look at Lord's body. After you exchanged blows with that black-clothed man yesterday, this subordinate noticed that your breathing was a little unstable. It seems that you're injured. Xiao Su replied indifferently. It's fine, don't worry. But Ethereal wanted to persuade him, but Lord raised his hand and stopped him. There's no need to say anything more. This prince knows his own body best. With that, Xiao Su walked into the room that LVE had prepared for him. Ethereal shook his head. No, he was still worried. No matter what, he had to take Lord's pulse. But as subordinates, they could never change Lord's decision. He was injured as soon as he left the capital. What was he going to do for the rest of his journey? Ethereal wanted to discuss this with Turin and the others, but it was useless. It would only make them anxious. After thinking for a long time, his gaze fell on the closed door behind him. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. Lord wouldn't listen to what they said, but there was one person who Lord wouldn't disobey. Although he didn't want to admit it, the current situation didn't allow him to be willful. So Ethereal knocked on the door. A weak voice came from inside. Come in. Ethereal pushed the door open and walked in. He immediately saw the person lying on the bed. Little young master, this subordinate is here to check on you. Chu Qingyan saw that it was Ethereal and smiled as she got up. You saved my life again. Thank you. Little young master, you're too polite. This is this subordinate's duty. Ethereal sat down on a chair in front of the bed. He placed a hand on her wrist and checked her eyes and tongue. Finally, he withdrew his hand and said a few simple words. Suddenly, he seemed to have something to say but stopped. Chapter 195. Ethereal looked a bit strange today. He was originally indifferent to her. But why was he answering all her questions today? Now he looked like he wanted to say something. Chu Qingyan was a bit confused. Take the initiative to ask him? No way, right? What if he said she was meddling in other people's business? Ethereal was also thinking about how to open his mouth at this time. At the same time, he was also puzzled. Didn't Hualing say that the little princess was very understanding? Why was he vexed for so long? But she was just silently pretending to be dead, and looking at the top of the bed. Was there anything to look at on the top of the bed? So the two of them just waited like this. In the end, Chu Qingyan couldn't take it anymore. Her patience wasn't as good as his. Ethereal, do you have something to say to me? Chu Qingyan turned to look at him. He sat there for a while without saying anything. She used her toes to guess that he really did have something to talk to her about. Ethereal nodded when he heard this. Chu Qingyan helplessly rolled her eyes at the top of the bed. Big Ice Cube, oh Big Ice Cube. Your subordinates are either as noisy as Hualing, or as coquettish as Turin, or as crazy as Muling, all right. Now there's another taciturn. If you don't knock him, he won't open his mouth. Why are all your subordinates so strange? Speak. Chu Qingyan had already prepared her heart. This person didn't like her getting close to the Big Ice Cube. Maybe he wanted to persuade her to return to the capital, so she wouldn't be a burden to the Big Ice Cube. Only when Ethereal opened his mouth, she was stunned. Little young master, Master was injured last night. This subordinate wanted to take a look at his injuries, but Master said it was fine and didn't allow this subordinate to take a look. This subordinate is a bit worried. Ethereal sighed softly. Chu Qingyan frowned and struggled to sit up. Her injuries hurt a bit, but she couldn't care too much right now. What did you say? His Highness is injured? Yes. After the fight with the black-clothed man last night, Master's complexion seemed a little off. I reckon that he suffered some internal injuries. Ethereal said slowly as he recalled the scene last night. If he's sick, he needs to be treated. If he's injured, he needs to be treated. You have to take a look at him. If a small injury becomes a big one, it will be dangerous. Chu Qingyan immediately said. The Big Ice Cube was actually injured. Why didn't she notice it just now? She blamed herself for being too careless. However, she couldn't be blamed. Xiao Su didn't show any signs of discomfort. If it wasn't for Ethereal seeing his expression last night, no one would have known that he was injured. Ethereal shook his head and smiled bitterly. It's not that this subordinate doesn't want to check on Master's injuries. It's just that Master refuses to talk about this matter. This subordinate has no choice but to look for young Master. Chu Qingyan pointed at herself with a headache. Are you saying that I can persuade His Highness? Ethereal smiled embarrassedly. Apart from you, this subordinate can't think of anyone else who can persuade Master. Chu Qingyan recalled his attitude towards her in the past. Now he was lowering his voice and asking for her help. She felt a little emotional. She knew that the people under the Big Ice Cube all had their own areas of expertise. That was why they all had a faint air of arrogance. Among these people, Ethereal gave her the strongest feeling. But now, he was willing to lower his head and ask for her help for the Big Ice Cube. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but admit that these people were absolutely loyal to the Big Ice Cube. What about the retired emperor? Chu Qingyan asked. Ethereal shook his head. Although Master respects the retired emperor, even the retired emperor can't change his decision. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel even more surprised. Then why do you think that I can change His Highness' mind? The retired emperor could be said to be the person closest to the Big Ice Cube other than the Sichuan emperor. If even the retired emperor couldn't change his mind, then what right did she, who had joined halfway, have to say anything? Ethereal slowly raised his head and looked at the dazed young girl in front of him. His gaze slowly turned resolute. If even you can't persuade him, then this subordinate can't find a second person. Chu Qingyan felt that Ethereal had given her too much credit. She knew her own limits. To the big ice cube, she was just a child in his hands. She was like a little sister to him. He could do whatever he wanted with her, but when it came to matters that involved his bottom line, he wouldn't back down at all. But no matter what, the big ice cube really made her angry. How could someone who didn't cherish himself take good care of himself in the future? He wasn't a 3 or 4-year-old child. Ethereal, ask Xining to come in. Chu Qingyan said. Ethereal's eyes brightened when he heard this. Thank you, young master. When Ethereal got up to leave, Chu Qingyan stopped him. Ethereal, thank you for reminding me that there's something wrong with His Highness' health. But I'm not doing this for your sake. It's because I'm just as concerned about His Highness as you are. This subordinate understands. Ethereal looked deeply at her, then turned and left. After he asked Xining to go in, Ethereal looked at the tightly shut door, and sighed softly in his heart. If you asked him why he felt that only the young princess could change his master's mind, and no one else could do it, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to answer that question. He could only say that perhaps the young princess had already become a special existence in his master's heart. This was a recognition that he couldn't deny. He wasn't completely convinced of the young princess's identity. His prejudice against her still existed, but at this time, the two of them could only shake hands and make peace and fight together. The young princess was very smart. She had also seen this point, which was why she said those words when he left. He suddenly realized that the young princess wasn't as immature as other 10-year-old children. On the contrary, she was very intelligent. His prejudice against her seemed to have lessened a little. But no matter what, he hoped that the young princess would succeed. Xining was brewing medicine when she was summoned. She asked in confusion, Master, why are you looking for this servant? When His Highness has rested, go and tell him that I have something urgent to talk to him about. Chu Qingyan instructed. Xining was a little confused. His Highness had only left not long ago. Why was Master already missing His Highness? Could it be that it was like what outsiders said, 1 day apart felt like 3 years, and 2 hours apart felt like several days? Xining didn't ask any more questions and agreed. After Xining left, Chu Qingyan lay on the bed and began to ponder how she should persuade Big Ice Cube if he came later. He couldn't even persuade his confidant, so could she really? After Xiao Su got up, he heard someone knocking on the door. He said, Come in. Xining carefully pushed open the door and walked in. When Xiao Su saw that it was Xining, he immediately frowned. What's wrong with your master? Xining shook her head repeatedly. Master is fine, but Master wants to see your highness now. Chapter 196. Upon hearing Xining's words, Xiao Su did not delay and immediately went to Chu Qingyan's room. When he saw that she was lying on the bed unscathed and playing with the knot, he finally relaxed and slowly walked over. Instead of resting properly, why are you looking for this prince? When Chu Qingyan heard this, she grabbed the knot in her hand and patted the bed beside her with a smile. Unfortunately, she was thinking about something and forgot about her injury. Then, she grimaced in pain as she gasped for air. Xiao Su was helpless against her and sighed. Can't you pay more attention to yourself? Chu Qingyan also sighed. We're about the same. There's not much difference between us. However, she only dared to say this in her heart, and did not dare to say it out loud. Didn't I forget? Chu Qingyan slowed down, trying to let the pain go away. Xiao Su sat down beside her bed and said with raised brows, Speak. Why are you looking for this prince? When Chu Qingyan heard this, she protested. Could it be that I can only look for you if I need something, but I can't chat with you if I don't need anything? Xiao Su frowned, which was a rare sight. This prince thinks that you're the one who's itching for a beating. Chu Qingyan chuckled and smashed the pot to pieces. All right, go ahead and hit me. Let's see if you can't bear to hit me. Or should I say, do you have the heart to bully an injured person? Why is this little fellow becoming more and more shameless? Just a little bit of color, and she's really going to open up a dye house. Xiao Su did not plan to pay attention to her, and prepared to get up. However, the moment he stood up, he felt his clothes being tugged. He didn't need to think to know who it was. Big Ice Cube, I just want to talk to you. Chu Qingyan suddenly lowered her voice. Xiao Su, who had wanted to pull her hand away, put it down when he heard this. He turned around and sat down again. He wanted to see what this little fellow was up to this time. Seeing that he had compromised, Chu Qingyan cheered in her heart. She had taken the first step in a long journey. What do you want to say? Xiao Su went straight to the point. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes and said, Big Ice Cube, how about I tell you a story? Xiao Su's face darkened, and was about to stand up again, when Chu Qingyan immediately covered her shoulder and groaned. The wound hurts, it hurts? Xiao Su sighed deeply. He reached out to hold her uninjured shoulder and asked, Did you pull on your wound? Let this prince take a look. Seeing that he was really going to check on her, Chu Qingyan immediately waved her hand to stop him. Okay, it doesn't hurt anymore. Xiao Su looked at her suspiciously. It really doesn't hurt? Chu Qingyan immediately nodded. Xiao Su retracted his hand and said indifferently, This prince was the one who took care of your wounds. If you still feel uncomfortable, tell this prince, and this prince will help you change your dressing. Like a bolt from the blue, Chu Qingyan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Was this Lord of the Lord very free? Why was it that he was the one who bandaged her every time she got injured? No wonder she felt that the bandaging method this time was so familiar. The truth was that it was the original recipe, the original smell. Tell me, what story do you want to tell? Xiao Su felt that if he didn't let her continue, he wouldn't be able to have a peaceful afternoon. Chu Qingyan hurriedly collected her emotions and got down to business. The story I want to tell is from my own experience. Xiao Su nodded, looking like he was willing to listen to the details. Sensing that the big ice cube didn't seem to be interested at all, Chu Qingyan took a deep breath and didn't argue with him. Then she slowly began to speak. When I was very young, it should be the first time my teeth changed. Because I liked to eat sweets, I was very lazy after eating sweets, so I didn't brush my teeth. Brushing your teeth means to clean your teeth. Later on, a black spot appeared on one of my teeth. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows when he heard this. What was this little fellow talking about? Xining cursed in her heart. What the hell was Master talking about? Something was clearly wrong. Ignoring the expressions of everyone present, Chu Qingyan continued. At first, when I looked in the mirror, I thought that it shouldn't be a problem. It was just a black spot. I would just brush my teeth at night, and it would be fine. Then after a few days, the black spot showed signs of expanding. I wasn't worried and continued to eat my sweets. After a while, I found that whenever I used the teeth on the other side to eat sweets, that tooth would faintly hurt. But I still didn't take it to heart, and continued to eat my sweets and brush my teeth. But Chu Qingyan's expression suddenly became sorrowful and indignant. Finally, one day, that tooth hurt so much that I couldn't eat. My mother, it was my mother, asked me what was wrong. I opened my mouth to show her. She got a fright and said that my tooth was decayed. She immediately took me to see a doctor, that is, a doctor. The doctor told me to look in the mirror. When I looked, there was actually a big hole in that tooth. Later on, that tooth was pulled out. It hurt so much that I couldn't eat properly for several days. As Chu Qingyan spoke, she covered her face. Although she had changed her body, she still couldn't forget that painful feeling from back then. After Xiao Su finished listening, he reached out and lifted her chin. Open your mouth and let this prince see? Chu Qingyan immediately grabbed his hand and coughed lightly to cover it up. At that time, it was still a baby tooth. Now it has already grown new teeth. When Xiao Su heard this, he relaxed and withdrew his hand. He looked at her with an amused expression. Then why are you telling this to this prince? Could it be that you want this prince to take good care of his teeth? Chu Qingyan shook her head and then nodded. Not all of it. I'm mainly telling you. Her eyes were calm, but there was a faint layer of worry in them. If your body has a small illness or injury, you can't not take it to heart. Because what if there comes a day when it threatens your health? When Chu Qingyan's voice fell, Xiao Su instantly put away all his emotions and sharply looked at her. It seems like there's a hidden meaning in your words. This wasn't a question, but an affirmation. Chu Qingyan brushed her hair. Big Ice Cube was so sensitive that he could sense it. As expected of a divine general who used soldiers. But she didn't deny it. Big Ice Cube, I actually want to tell you that if you're sick or injured, you have to get treatment immediately. Otherwise, it will snowball and get worse and worse. Xiao Su's cold eyes swept over, and Chu Qingyan instantly felt the surrounding air freeze, the temperature dropping. Chu Qingyan resisted the pressure in his eyes and fearlessly said, Big Ice Cube, if you don't want to listen, I have another story to share with you. It's about hiding one's illness for fear of treatment. There was a famous doctor called Bien Quebec. The first time he met Du Quan, he said, Enough. You don't need to worry about this prince's matters. You just need to take care of yourself, and you won't cause trouble for this prince. Xiao Su stood up. He no longer had the gentle expression from before, and his tone was as cold as before. Chu Qingyan was frightened by Xiao Su's coldness. She couldn't help but admit that her heart was filled with jealousy because of what he had said. Big Ice Cube, I'm not worrying for nothing. I'm just worried about you. No need. You just need to take care of yourself. Xiao Su calmed his emotions, but his tone was still cold. Chapter 197. If you refuse to listen to my advice, then you don't need to worry about me either. Chu Qingyan felt wronged as she shouted at him. She then turned her head to the side. Xining, from today onwards, I'm not eating. You don't have to bring food into the room. Ah. Xining didn't know what was going on. The two of them were clearly getting along fine, so why did they suddenly start arguing? Lord, Xining was in a difficult position. Let her be. Xiao Su was about to leave the room. Chu Qingyan immediately blurted out. Xiao Su, stop right there. Xiao Su turned around, his eyes filled with an unreadable emotion. You dare to call this prince's name directly? Chu Qingyan didn't dare to look him in the eye, guessing that he was definitely angry right now. She lowered her head and tugged at her knot as she said in a fit of pique. Isn't a name meant to be called? Otherwise, why would you give it a name? Xiao Su flung his sleeves. You actually learned how to twist words and force logic. Fine, you don't want to eat. Fine, Xining, I'll starve her for a day first. This prince wants to see how long you can be stubborn for. Hearing his tone, he was clearly angry. This was the first time he had been so fierce to her, but now wasn't the time to be angry. Seeing that he was about to leave from the corner of her eye, Chu Qingyan was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Her shoulder was faintly hurting from the heaving of her breathing. Her eyes lit up, and she placed her right hand on her left shoulder. Then she closed her eyes and pressed hard. Master, your wound has split open. Xining, who had been paying attention to her master's every move, immediately called out when she saw this scene. Chu Qingyan's face was pale, but she gave her a look of praise. As expected of her subordinate, so quick-witted. Xiao Su, who had just stepped out of the room, turned around and walked back in large strides. When he returned to the front of the bed, he saw that the blood on the little fellow's left shoulder had already soaked the white inner clothes, and red flowers bloomed on the snow-white skin. He frowned and sat down. He shifted the person on the bed into his arms and said to Xining, who was still in a daze, Medicine and gauze. Xining immediately took it over when she heard that. Xiao Su wanted to take off her clothes, but was caught by her hand. Qingyan, this is not the time to be willful. Xiao Su stared coldly at the bloodless face in front of him, his tone as cold as ice. Chu Qingyan shook her head. A crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. You can be willful, but why can't I be willful? She said each word with great difficulty, almost as if she was in pain. Qingyan, don't think that you can threaten this prince. Xiao Su suppressed his anger. Then can I threaten you? She asked with a curious expression, as if she was a studious student. Xiao Su clenched his fists and looked at her bright eyes, but he couldn't say that he couldn't. Chu Qingyan waited for a while, but he didn't answer. She had an answer in her heart. She was a little happy, but also a little bitter. Big Ice Cube, if you want me to bandage your wound again, I can, as long as you let Ethereal take a look at your injury. You. Xiao Su looked at her with a gaze as sharp as a sword, but what met his gaze was her lack of fear. This wasn't the first time that someone had threatened him with an exchange, but it was the first time that he couldn't resolutely refuse someone's threat. It was him who gave her the ability to make him give in. Feeling his hesitation, Chu Qingyan let go of his wrist and grabbed his finger. Her tone changed, no longer being as hard as before. she said in a soft voice. Big Ice Cube, I'm not forcing you, but I'm very worried about you. Xiao looked deeply at her. The blood on his shoulder bloomed bit by bit, but she didn't care at all. Her pale face was so transparent that he could see the veins under her skin. Her expression was weak, but it was filled with stubbornness. She was going through so much trouble for him, willing to tear her wound open just to receive a nod from him. Little fellow, how can this king be at ease letting you live alone in this world? Perhaps it was because Xiao had been silent for too long that Chu Qingyan's heart began to feel uneasy. Would the Big Ice Cube agree? At this time, Xiao turned to the stunned Xining on the side and said, Have Ethereal come over? Xining happily complied when she heard this and quickly ran out of the room. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief and her body relaxed, but she couldn't help coughing. Xiao sighed softly and reached out to soothe her. You reap what you sow. I reap what I sow, but it's not as bad as you hiding your illness for fear of treatment. When he looked over, Chu Qingyan immediately changed her words. Oh no. I reap what I sow. When she finished speaking, Chu Qingyan was a little annoyed. Why was she so disappointing? Ethereal was already waiting in the room. When she saw Xining summon her, she immediately followed her out. When she entered the room, she saw Chu Qingyan lying on the bed with her wound open, and her master sitting by the bed. She was puzzled. What was going on? Let's take a look at her wound first. Let's examine her body first. The two of them said in unison. Xiao frowned. Chu Qingyan immediately took the opportunity to say, Anyway, we've already agreed that if you don't examine her, I won't bandage her wound. Xiao glanced at her, and didn't want to argue with her anymore. If he delayed any longer, she might lose too much blood. Thus, he got up and sat on the chair, extending his wrist. Ethereal was overjoyed when she saw this. She walked forward and placed her hand on his pulse, holding her breath with rapt attention. Chu Qingyan leaned against the bed wall and looked at them without blinking, waiting for Ethereal's diagnosis and treatment results. Ethereal's expression changed from the initial calmness to shock, and then to pain. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel her heart clench. Ethereal, how is His Highness's body? Chu Qingyan hurriedly asked when she saw him withdraw his hand. Master's internal organs are damaged. His qi and blood are in a mess, and 30% of his internal energy is destroyed. If he doesn't recuperate well, I'm afraid that the accumulated blood clots will block his meridians and cause his blood to be unable to flow freely. In the end, he didn't expect that his master's injuries were more serious than he had imagined. Fortunately, the young princess Consort had convinced him. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Then what can we do? Chu Qingyan's heart was already in a knot. For the next period of time, Master can't use force. This subordinate will write a prescription for Master and pair it with a tranquilizing pill. After drinking it for a period of time, he will recover completely. But this period of time would take at least 3 months. Good. As long as he can recuperate, that's good. Xining, quickly boil the medicine for His Highness. Chu Qingyan immediately said to Xining. Thus Ethereal left with Xining. At this time, Xiao stood up and returned to the side of the bed. He looked at her. Can you treat the injury on your shoulder now? Chu Qingyan's heart was in a mess. Seeing him act as if nothing had happened, she felt even more upset. Why didn't this person care about her at all? Her injuries were already so serious, yet he still wanted to bandage them for her. Xiao saw that she was silent. He took the medicine and gauze and helped her take off her clothes to her shoulders. He gently undid the gauze that was already soaked in blood. His brows were tightly furrowed and didn't loosen. After Xiao finished treating her wounds, the moment he helped her pull up her clothes, pea-sized hot tears hit the back of his hand. He was slightly startled and immediately asked, Does it hurt a lot? Chu Qingyan reached out and hugged him. She buried her head in his embrace and shook her head. Big Ice Cube, so you're not omnipotent. You can also get hurt and feel pain. Chapter 198. I thought that leaning against a big tree would be nice. But I never thought that there would be a day when a big tree would encounter a storm, and he would also be injured. Was I too confident or was I deceiving myself? Faced with the little fellow's sudden dependence and sadness, Xiao Su was a bit helpless. In the end, he could only reach out to stroke her back and silently accompany her, dispelling the sadness in her heart. Big Ice Cube, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to force you. I was just worried about you. She tightly grabbed his clothes as she apologized. Xiao Su stroked her back from time to time. Big Ice Cube, can you promise me that if you get injured in the future, you won't shoulder it by yourself? She tried to persuade him. His fingers paused and after a while he put them down again. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief and continued. You have to cherish yourself. If you don't even treat yourself well, who will cherish you? Xiao Su suddenly felt that it was funny. Was this little guy teaching him how to conduct himself in society? If there's anything sad, you can tell me. Even if I can't help you solve it, I can share the pain with you. Chu Qingyan continued to ramble on. But in the end, she did not hear his reply. She struggled to get up, but she was pressed into his embrace. You're still young and your shoulders are too weak. It's better if this king does it alone. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips when she heard this. How was she young? Wasn't she just a bit short? How was she weak? Wasn't she just not strong enough? Have a good rest. Don't worry about anything else. Just take care of yourself and save this king some trouble. Xiao Su lightly said. But your injuries? Chu Qingyan was a bit worried. With Ethereal here, what do you have to worry about? Go to sleep. You've already been tormented for an entire day. Xiao Su cut her off, not allowing her to explain. Chu Qingyan felt that she had challenged his bottom line today, and it was time to stop while she was ahead. Moreover, she was basically holding on to her energy, and her body couldn't take it anymore. Thus, she obediently nodded, found a comfortable position in his arms, and then fell asleep. Xiao Su looked at the little fellow sleeping peacefully in his arms, his eyes flashing with a myriad of complex emotions. Ever since he left the capital, he no longer cared so much about his own body, but this little girl always used her own way to remind him again and again of her special place in his heart, making him unable to give up. After placing her on the bed and pulling up the blanket, Xiao Su turned around and left. After leaving the room, a subordinate went upstairs to report, Master, Lord Huling is back. Hearing that, Xiao Su went downstairs and saw Huling's group. Huling and the others were more or less injured. When they saw their lord coming downstairs, they immediately went up to greet him. Huling said with some annoyance, Master, we lost track of them. Those black-clothed men are really good at hiding. After leaving this forest, they disappeared. Xiao Su walked to the center of the lobby and sat down. Looking at the slightly tired guards after last night's fierce battle, he said to Huling, Since they came once, there will be a second time. Don't be in a hurry to track them down. Go and rest first. Let Turin's men take the place of the guards. Huling and Turin immediately complied. This inn was already ownerless, so Xiao Su used it as a temporary residence. The guards each had their own duties, standing guard and patrolling in an orderly manner. Su Jian, who was sitting on the other side, couldn't help but feel a faint admiration when he saw this. It was rumored that His Royal Highness was good at managing the army, and it was indeed true. Grandmaster, why have you appeared here? Xiao Su saw Su Jian, and ordered someone to pour tea for him. Su Jian smiled and replied, A few days ago, my master's good friend asked me to search for a family member who has been missing for a long time. Now that I've arrived here, I just so happened to run into you all who saw through their trap and saved almsgiver Chu. I see. Xiao Su nodded. Have you found the missing people? I'm afraid they've already been killed by this inn. Su Jian closed his eyes and put his palms together, saying ba. At this time, Turin walked out from the inner courtyard and reported to Xiao Su with a serious expression. Master, the 3 demons of heaven, earth, and man have confessed to killing the travelers. This subordinate has been identified by them, and found the dismembered corpses in the small storeroom. The other travelers have already been. Even though the earth spirit was used to seeing life and death, it was still shocked by this extremely vicious and cruel method. Now it was completely enraged. Ba, good indeed, good indeed. Ethereal chanted with his eyes closed. Hand these 3 people and their crimes to the local authorities. Confirm the identities of all the victims and have the authorities help find their families, Xiao Su said coldly. Yes. Turin obeyed the order and left. When the hall was quiet again, the people upstairs came down the stairs with a bang 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 sound. What a good sleep. The retired emperor's voice came from afar. When he saw Su Jian downstairs, he was stunned. Su Jian, why are you here? Su Jian nodded at him and repeated what he had said to Xiao Su. Then he asked, Retired Emperor, have you seen this humble monk's martial uncle? His martial uncle had a good relationship with the retired emperor many years ago. A few years ago, he had traveled with the retired emperor and never returned to the temple. The disciples had been looking for him for a long time, but there was no news of him. I haven't seen him since we parted ways in Luoyang. Perhaps he's roaming the world again, the retired emperor said with a wave of his hand. The retired emperor waved his hand. However, after he finished speaking, he felt his grandson's gaze on him. He immediately lowered his head guiltily. His engagement with Yan-Las was the result of his discussion with Su Jian's martial uncle. But when he walked down the stairs, he realized something was wrong. He turned and asked, Su'er, where's Yan-Las? Why don't I see her? She's injured and resting in her room, Xiao Su said indifferently as he sipped his tea. Injured? Is it serious? The retired emperor immediately asked. When the retired emperor asked this, Su Jian paused and looked at Xiao Su, waiting for his answer. It's not serious. She'll be fine after a few days of rest, Xiao Su said. That's good, that's good. Otherwise, no one will make pastries for me. Turin, who was in the middle of making arrangements, was speechless. Fortunately, the young princess Consort wasn't here. Otherwise, she would probably explode in anger. The retired emperor who forgot about his granddaughter-in-law when there was food to eat. Su Jian twirled his Buddhist prayer beads as he thought to himself. The injury looked serious, but with the abilities of Xiao Su's subordinates, it wouldn't be a problem to treat it, so he was relieved. By the way, old master, I haven't asked you yet. How come you didn't know about such a major incident? Mu Ling asked in confusion. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Su also turned to look at him. The retired emperor felt even more pressured. He stammered, not knowing what to say. Was he supposed to tell them that he stole wine from the kitchen and drank himself unconscious? Xining, who was walking past the retired emperor, wrinkled her nose. Why do I smell alcohol? Everyone looked at the retired emperor with a look of sudden realization. The retired emperor immediately glared back. What? You don't allow people to drink. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Chapter 199. The rain had yet to stop, so Su Jian stayed at the inn for the time being. Chu Qingyan slept for a day and a night. After she had her fill, she looked much better. On this day, Su Jian came to visit. Chu Qingyan asked Xining to take a seat. Reverend, I didn't think you'd come to visit Qingyan. Almsgiver Chu is too polite. Su Jian smiled. How are your injuries? The wound is already forming a scab, so it shouldn't be a big problem. Chu Qingyan also smiled, then said half-jokingly, Reverend, you've already saved me 3 times. Qingyan doesn't know how to thank you. If you need any help in the future, feel free to ask. If Qingyan can do it, I'll do my best to help. She thought that if she couldn't do it, there was still big ice, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Su Jian smiled. Almsgiver Chu, don't worry. It's just fate. This poor monk happens to meet you every time. If it were anyone else, they would have done the same. Chu Qingyan used to think that this person was strange and naggy. He always liked to talk about Buddhist principles to her, and always liked to persuade her to become a monk. Now that she saw him sitting there humbly with a peaceful gaze, she couldn't help but feel at peace with him. It was a fact that this person had saved her. Even if he didn't accept her kindness, she could return the favor in the future if she had the ability to do so. Reverend, I've heard about your situation from Xining and the others. Where are you going next? Chu Qingyan asked curiously. We monks don't have a fixed residence. The world is our home. The first step out of the temple is the beginning of experience. Life is like a sea of suffering. The responsibility of us Buddhist disciples is to save the people from the abyss of suffering. His hands were clasped together tightly and firmly. His gentle gaze was sincere and solemn. Chu Qingyan frowned slightly. Reverend, you're not going to guide me into Buddhism again? Take me in as your disciple? Su Jian smiled. No need. Let nature take its course. If many hardships can be predicted through divination, and then stopped, then a calamity wouldn't be a calamity. Chu Qingyan frowned. What was this person mumbling about? Why couldn't she understand a single word? However, she could still understand his intention of persuading her to give up on shaving her head and becoming a monk. Seeing her confused look, Su Jian sighed in his heart. She didn't need to understand. As long as she lived according to her thoughts, he could only do his best no matter what happened in the future. By the way, these are the Buddha beads that I consecrated in the temple. If you don't mind, you can accept them. Su Jian took out a string of ebony Buddhist beads from his sleeve. It was formed by connecting a peanut-sized bead with 20 to 30 beads the size of soybeans. It was round and simple. Chu Qingyan liked it very much when she saw it. However, Chu Qingyan did not accept it. Instead, she blinked and looked at him. Why are you giving me such an expensive gift? These ebony Buddhist beads can keep you safe. You and I are fated, so I'll give it to you as a meeting gift. Moreover, these ebony Buddhist beads are not expensive. Su Jian placed the beads in her hand. Chu Qingyan saw that he had already placed it in front of her, and was too embarrassed to refuse. She accepted it graciously. Thank you, great master. A single ebony Buddhist bead was indeed not expensive, but a bracelet of Buddhist beads could not be described as expensive. Moreover, to be able to be personally consecrated by the revered great master Su Jian was a blessing that everyone could only wish for. After Su Jian left, Xining came up to take a look. She enviously asked in confusion, Master, why is great master Su Jian so good to you? Perhaps he feels that I'm fated with Buddha. Chu Qingyan recalled the few times she had met him. Almost all of them had been in danger, and he had said that only by entering Buddhism would she be able to live a peaceful life. Perhaps he wants to take me as his disciple, so he used this string of Buddhist beads to bribe me. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. Xining also couldn't help but laugh. The master and servant no longer harped on this matter. That's right, what is His Highness doing today? She hadn't seen Big Ice Cube's figure for a long time, so she really missed him. Xining shook her head. This servant was brewing medicine for master today, and didn't notice. Chu Qingyan was about to ask her to go see where Big Ice Cube was when she suddenly saw a white head appear at the door. She curled her lips, crossed her arms, and harumphed. Don't hide, I saw you. Thus, when the person hiding at the door heard her, he rubbed his head and put his hands on his hips. He said fiercely, Who's hiding, who's hiding? I was looking at it openly. Chu Qingyan didn't want to argue with him. Speak. Why are you looking for me? Do you feel apologetic in your heart? Hearing this, the Emperor Emeritus was deflated. He found a chair and sat down. He coughed lightly and said, Yen Lass, I thought that after 2 days, your anger would have subsided. I didn't expect you to still be thinking about it. His expression was saying, Why are you so petty? Chu Qingyan shot a glance at him and harumphed coldly. Grandfather, who wouldn't be thinking about it? If no one came to save her, grandfather, the person lying in front of you would be a corpse. Oh, don't say any more. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have drunk so much that I couldn't wake up. The Emperor Emeritus raised his hands in surrender. He didn't know that because he accidentally got drunk, the innkeeper colluded with the men in black to plot against him, causing Yen Lass to be kidnapped. At that time, Xiao Su thought that his grandfather was upstairs, so he only sent Qing Yi to protect the little fellow. He didn't expect that the Emperor Emeritus had already gone to see Zhou Gong, panting heavily. Chu Qingyan was actually just teasing the Emperor Emeritus, and didn't really want to blame him. Fortunately, he didn't appear. Otherwise, those people were highly skilled in martial arts. What if old Master Yen accidentally got injured? An elderly person's body was much weaker than a young person's. Fortunately, Qing Yi only suffered some external injuries and I'm fine. Then this matter is over. Chu Qingyan generously waved her hand. When the Emperor Emeritus heard this, he immediately returned to his usual well-dressed appearance, sweeping away his previous demeanor of a little wife. That's right, Yen Lass, is Su'er injured? Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. How did you know? Although the ice cube didn't order the news to be sealed, no one dared to mention it to the Emperor Emeritus. That's because I have a pair of fiery eyes. The Emperor Emeritus stroked his beard complacently. In fact, he only had a guess because he saw Lve take out the medicine bowl from Suer's room. Seeing Chu Qingyan's reaction, he confirmed this guess. Chu Qingyan obviously didn't believe it, but since the Emperor Emeritus already knew, she didn't hide it and told him about her injuries from the fight with the men in black. When he heard that his grandson had resisted the ethereal examination, the Emperor Emeritus, who had always been sloppy, suddenly calmed down, as if he had recovered the appearance of an elder. He sighed softly at Chu Qingyan. Yin lass, do you know why Suer acted this way? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.